Hello, and welcome to my review of The Last of Us Season 2. As you can tell from the length of this video, this is incredibly long, as I have quite a lot to say. But before we get into it, just make a little commotion. Anybody recognize we got a new buddy up here? This is Lane from Serial Experiments. Lane, just had to shout her out just because she's new and we love her. And yeah, we love her, so I had to point her out. But um yeah, so without any further ado, let's get into her. Okay, so season 2 of The Last of Us. So I structure this by going episode by episode, and then when I talk about the last episode of the show, I kind of also do a little bit of like talking about the total experience of the show. But I do also, I was writing this as it was coming out weekly. So I kind of make some assumptions or predictions about what's going to happen, and then I'll like answer myself because obviously I have the hindsight now. But yeah, I was yeah, when the season first started, I immediately knew something was amiss. So when I first started writing this, it was literally like 20 minutes after the first episode had aired because I had quite a lot to say. Um, but yeah, if you are aware of anything that has been going on with the show, they add and change quite a bit. So this um the main the first episode literally starts with a change from the game. So I knew kind of like, uh-oh, uh-oh. But the main kind of thesis or the main issue that they're doing with this is they're really dragging scenes out. And this was my observation about episode 1, and it continues through episode 7. Scenes are really long, and they're adding a lot of things that were not in the game to really pad out that runtime, which I find funny because the game is already very long. So, I know you have to get creative since this is an action game, and obviously can't include the same amount of action that you would in the game in the show, but they do add and change quite a bit in order to not just making up for that. They're changing shit that they really didn't even that you can't attribute to that reason. Um, so also another warning is I am a little scatterbrained about this. This is not the best organized thing that I have ever made, and that usually happens when I have a lot of feelings. So that's my explanation for that. And I do make frequent comparisons to the game. Obviously, I mean, that is the source material. So I do that. I also will spoil the entirety of the video game of The Last of Us 2. So if you are not interested in spoilers for all of that, then maybe don't watch this. But I feel like a lot of the stuff that they do in this season is going to have a ripple effect into things later that is going to happen in seasons 3 and 4 that they have planned for the show. So I kind of need to talk about it now. But yeah, so full spoilers for the video game. Okay, so first episode right off the bat, elephant in the room, Abby. First scene with Abby does a lot of things very wrong very quickly. The biggest and most obvious change is Abby herself, how she looks. I was not generally a fan of the casting choice. I feel like Caitlin Dever, I don't know how to say it, I'm sorry. I think she is far too small and skinny to be playing Abby. She's a good actress. I don't, the way that she like does the voice of Abby, like sounds like Abby, but I do think that her physicality is not what we need for someone playing Abby. Um, Abby's muscles and height are significant to her character arc and her overall journey. Abby spent years training to meet Joel. She builds and she works and she dedicates years to being in the best physical shape that she can possibly be in so that she can take out this killer that she's built up in her mind for 4 years. And when she does see him, she immobilizes him very quickly. I think that her decision to use the golf club to kill him was not premeditated in any way. It was significant that it was kind of a spur of the moment decision. And they do that in the show too. But it's a little bit more intimidating when you see someone built like this grabbing a golf club versus someone who's built like this, you know? Um, so it, like, she, uh, using the golf club was a way to put her muscles to good use. She was, it's a golf club is heavy, but, in the hands of someone as strong as Abby, it becomes very scary, very lethal. And obviously, Abby in the show made it work, but it's a little different. It's a little different. Um, but I think that it's important to have that because her preparation paid off. The muscles that she built were put to good use because she killed Joel in a way that necessitated her being built like that. Again, Abby in the show made it work, but it's just different. But her muscles are a reflection of her anger, and that is something that is important to her character. Neil Druckmann himself has said that Abby has the muscles so that when players are playing as her fighting style is similar to Joel's, which is significant. That connects to the main theme of the game. The main idea of Abby's narrative. She is becoming more like Joel. That is something that we see a lot, and that is something that I talk about in my Last of Us video. So if you want to watch that, it's the video before this. But her physically being like Joel is also important. Another reason why her muscles are so important is at the very end of the game when Ellie goes to Santa Barbara and finds Abby and Lev. And when she finds them, they have both been strung up and starved. Abby's iconic braid has been cut off and she is emaciated. She is starving and incredibly skinny. This mission for revenge took everything from both of them. Ellie ends with nothing and no one. All of Abby's friends are dead except for Lev, and she loses her most identifiable feature, her muscles. All the hard work that she put in to be ready to kill Joel is taken away from her by people who are entirely unconnected to everything. The game works hard to build both Ellie and Abby up. We see them at their very best, living living their best lives, I guess. Yeah, living their best lives. And then the game works very hard to take that away from them. And that includes the thing that Abby has worked the hardest on, which is her body. How are they going to do that moment at the end of the show? When you see Abby strung up and maybe she loses her hair, but she looks the exact same physically. How will we see the physical toll that has been taken? Like, Ellie is bleeding out and loses 2 fingers, and the game is incredibly intentional with Ellie and Abby's bodies. They reflect who they are as characters. Yes, it reflects in gameplay too, but that isn't the only way. I don't know how they're going to show this ending in the TV show because it's just not going to be as effective at all. Abby's body was also something that was heavily criticized at the time of when the game came out. People were saying that it was impossible for a woman to look like that and that she must be transgender. But the game designers stuck to what they had made. And then the show takes away that element that was controversial. This is a common theme that we see throughout the show. And this is the first indicator of that theme, where the show is taking away elements of the game that were controversial and lessening them, making them more palatable, making it easier for a general audience to digest. And this is the first indicator of that happening. Literally in the first scene. Okay, so the change that the show makes with Abby that pisses me off in the first scene is what they are talking about in that first scene. We see the graveyard that the surviving Fireflies made, and then we see Abby. She said that she will find Joel and she will kill him slowly. Okay, so we are really going loose and funky with the storyline over here. Because in the game, you do not know Abby at all. You play as her for a little bit as you find Jackson, and then you run away from the Horde. Then she kills Joel brutally, And all we have is her name and a clue about where she might be. The goal of the game is to make you feel empathy for someone you hate. And it is incredibly effective at doing that. It's why I love the game so much. It's why I think it is so unique and effective and moving. The important part of that, though, is that it makes you hate Abby. You have to learn to hate Abby before you understand her. You have to be in Ellie's shoes completely before you learn about Abby. You're supposed to get completely swept up in Ellie's quest for revenge. You feel angry. You want to kill Abby and her friends. It's significant that you don't know why she did it. I had an idea of why she did it. I had a guess, but you then when you find out the real reason that Joel killed her dad, you understand completely. After hours and hours of being ready to kill her, you have a moment of clarity. You understand, and the show is taking away that moment and arc completely. This show tells you that Abby is a firefly, that she is getting revenge for her group. They leave out the fact that her dad was a doctor here, but they tell us that in the next episode. There's no more tension or mystery about who she is or why she did it. You just know right away. Her dad being the doctor isn't a big enough reveal. The fact that she was a firefly and her dad was the doctor being revealed at the same time is insane. Like, it is the true moment of empathy that you feel for Abby. It's the first moment of empathy that you feel for Abby, and it is incredibly significant that it happens after you have spent about 15 hours trying to kill her for something you don't know or understand. And Ellie has an idea, but she never fully knows why Abby did it. She thinks it's because Joel robbed the world of a cure, and in a way it is, but it's also because he killed her dad and all the fireflies. So it's crazy that the show is getting rid of all of that. You know why Abby is killing Joel, and you even know that she's coming. There is no surprise, there is no confusion or mystery. Here she comes. You don't even know who Abby is hunting in the game immediately. It all happens so quickly that to barely give the viewer a second to process it, just like Ellie. This continues the criticism that I felt in season 1, where the show was becoming softer and nicer, pulling its punches. Joel wasn't as mean, the violence wasn't as extreme, and now you feel sympathy for Abby earlier. Again, pulling its punches, taking less of a risk, being nicer to the viewer. Maybe they're afraid of losing viewers. Maybe they don't want Caitlin Dever to get bullied as badly as Laura Bailey. Whatever the motive, it makes the story have less teeth, less risk, and it's more by the books. The show is also making Ellie a lot more immature than she was in the game. Ellie in the game doesn't feel like any other 19-year-old that you would encounter today. She is very mature and has moments of being impulsive. She's not perfect, but I wouldn't call her immature at any point. Ellie yelling out that she is immune when she was with Tommy during this whole section, which is supposed to be a callback to this flashback that happens in the game that they cut from the show. They still have, I guess, wanted to have a moment of bonding between Ellie and Tommy, which I don't completely understand because Tommy doesn't really get a whole lot to do this season. So I don't really know why it was so important to establish this Ellie Tommy relationship when Tommy doesn't matter really at all. So, but yeah, so when they're out here and then Tommy's like, you gotta be careful because you're immune or whatever. And then Ellie like starts yelling out that she's immune. That was my first indicator. I was like, uh-oh, something's wrong with Ellie, because Ellie in the game, even at the exact same like scene that they're referencing, Ellie is 16, 15. Sorry, 15 or 16. I don't completely 16. She's 16 here, and she does not act like that at any point. Like, it's just completely different. So, like, and that was kind of, again, the first indicator of what would come with Ellie as a character in the show. And also her getting caught up in the spar that she does with that guy in the barn when Jesse's like, oh, stop, whatever. It's like, it's just continuing the theme from season 1 that Ellie has a violent heart. In retrospect, it's really funny that I took issue with this because that is the only time we see Ellie like doing anything. Like, I mean, not the only time. It's like a very small handful of moments where we see Ellie actually doing anything, like physical or violent. So I thought that they would continue the theme of like, oh, Ellie's so violent, which I will talk about later, like kind of how the season interprets that theme. But it is kind of funny that I took issue with it when it like that's like one of like two instances where we see Ellie actually fight somebody. Um, so but Ellie in the show still acts like she does during the first game. She acts like nothing has changed, like she's the exact same, like she's 15. And Ellie in the game, even before Joel's death, she is quieter and she's older and she feels a lot more mature. She's more calculated, more mature, and more lethal, obviously, which we see later. I also really don't like that Joel is almost replacing Ellie with Dina. I like the idea of Dina and Joel being close. I kind of like that in the game. Dina knows Joel, but not really. And the borderline toxicity of Dina blowing up her whole life to go with Ellie and support her through her journey, not seeking any vengeance of her own, is something that I like. Dina is ride or die for Ellie. I just like how Joel is like, oh, Dina treats me well and says hi to me, unlike Ellie. Like, Dina looks up to me, and how Dina is going to watch Curtis and Viper with Joel. Um, in the game, Ellie tells Dina that on their patrol that she's going to watch Curtis and Viper with Joel, and Dina is surprised because she thought that they were fighting. But that is Ellie extending the olive branch after her and Joel's conversation about forgiveness, and I like that. Dina doing it to make Ellie feel jealous is a little strange. I also think that Dina not really having a stake in the revenge against Abby is isolating for Ellie. It's easy for Jesse to come in and be like, "Oh, we have to leave." Sorry, I warned everybody that I was going to be a little scatterbrained, and that's what I'm doing. um, so when Jesse comes in during the day 3 in Seattle and is like, "Hey, we got to get Dina out of here," it's because she's so sick. It's what's best for Dina, and Ellie understands and agrees. And Dina agrees because she is so sick that she can't participate anymore and she can't support Ellie. So when they make the decision to leave Seattle, and it's Tommy and Ellie having that moment of true connection, Tommy asks if it's okay for. Sorry, again, I'm really bouncing around here. But I think it's important that Dina doesn't have a stake in the revenge with Abby because she is. It's an easy decision for her to leave Seattle because of how sick she is. Not, and it's made easier, or it makes the decision possible for Ellie because of how sick Dina is. So it's like Dina doesn't have any stake in it, and so when she has to leave, it's something that it's a burden that Ellie has to carry herself, and it's a burden that Ellie carries for the next year. If, should I have left? Should I have brought Dina? Like, everything connected to Dina just went downhill so quickly that, Ellie wasn't able to do what she set out to do. And that is something that, weighs on her every day that she is at the farm. So that isolation that Ellie feels as a result of the revenge quest is important. I feel it's, very important to the story. It's why Ellie goes to Santa Barbara. It's why Ellie has to leave. And if Dina, and Dina not being at that same point as Ellie is the whole story. Like, that's what drives the wedge between them. Okay, back to what I was talking about with Tommy and Ellie. So at the movie theater, in the show and in the game, Tommy asks if it's okay if Abby gets to live, and neither of them really are. This is in the game, but they have to leave. And adding Dina to that dynamic does lessen the isolation that Ellie feels. It will also completely change the farmhouse later. Ellie being completely lost in grief, not being able to sleep, eat, or function because she's just drowning in guilt and grief. Dina understands and connects with Ellie, but it isn't her mission, not her quest. And when Ellie and Tommy have that conversation at the farmhouse, this one, it isolates Ellie even more because Tommy is asking too much of her. They used to be equals, and now they aren't. It is important for that scene to work that Dina does not have the same kind of stake in the mission as the two of them. Dina represents a life that is one moved on, not dragged down by the events of the past. But if Dina is also a tether to the past and that revenge, then again, it will change their relationship dynamic quite a bit. That fight at the farmhouse will just be different, which makes me sad. I also think it's significant, again, I'm jumping ahead here, but that Ellie and Tommy were the two people who were there when Joel died. And they're the two people who loved Joel the most. And they're the two people who really undertook this entire revenge mission. So it was the most important and significant for the two of them. And Dina is outside of that dynamic, which all of them are very aware of. So the fact that the show is making Dina a part of that, I was worried would fuck up the dynamic between Ellie and Tommy, but it turns out the show did that kind of all on its own by not giving Tommy any kind of desire for revenge. Which, I think he'll still go to the marina in season 3 and kill Manny, maybe. But I mean, I think that's because, again, that's something they have to do with him. It's not, it's going to be like a moment where Tommy's like, oh, wait, well, I'm here, so maybe I should try to kill Abby. And it's not going to be like anything premeditated or anything that has any kind of weight or lasting impact or, anything that he feels particularly strongly about outside of this one moment. Whereas, in the game, it is something completely all consuming for both Ellie and Tommy. And it, drives a wedge between Ellie and Dina and also between Ellie and Tommy because they were able to lean on each other in this scene. The two of them were in the same boat, even though they're different, even though they don't know each other that well or they're not that close. They're close, but not as close, obviously, as both of them were to Joel. So they feel connection in this scene that is important for the two of them, and then they feel complete isolation and are cut off from each other here. So, that dynamic is incredibly important to the game. I was worried that it would be more of a three-way dynamic and that Ellie would be able to lean on Dina more. I'll get into more of that later, like why, the changes that the show makes. But this was my initial apprehension for that idea at this point in the show, which was about 30 minutes into episode 1. Okay, another change that they make in episode 1 is that they put Joel in therapy. Game Joel would never in a million years do that. Not ever, even after he has mellowed out after all the years in Jackson. Shoal Joel is more emotional and vulnerable. He talks to Dina about Sarah, something his game counterpart would never, ever do. I talked about why I dislike the change to making Joel more emotional and vulnerable in my initial video about The Last of Us. But to recap here, I dislike how Joel's anger and meanness is toned down in favor of emotion and vulnerability because of how Ellie adopts Joel's anger in the game. It is significant that Ellie gets Joel's worst parts and Abby gets his best. If Joel is more emotional and vulnerable, then that part of the story will be completely gone. And again, that is one of the more nuanced themes that they have in the game. And again, in retrospect, it's very funny that I am upset about this very nuanced theme being taken away when even the most basic themes are taken away by the show. So I got bigger fish to fry now. Okay, Joel is now in therapy where he is talking to Gail, who is Eugene's wife. In the game, Eugene gets he dies from a stroke. And in here, it seems he gets infected and dies, and Joel shoots him. I like that in the game that Eugene dies of a stroke, that it's an ending that Dina and Ellie can hope for. Proof that Jackson works, that someone can get old and die of a stroke in this world still. Not everyone has to get infected. So I think that is weaker in the show, but again, that's extremely minor. I will talk about more about the whole Eugene story later in episode 6 when we actually get the whole thing, but they kind of start it off here. Okay, it is strange that Joel would be going to therapy to try to work out his problems with Ellie, when that is not how Joel is. I liked the bit of Joel going into Ellie's room and saying that he would restring her guitar. That is taken from the game, though it's in a different context here. but I like that he's being a little weird and trying to connect with her. That's how Joel works. So him talking to a therapist trying to understand how to get Ellie back is strange because Game Joel knows exactly what the rift between them is about. He understands it completely. He also feels no regret. That is the whole point of their last conversation is both him showing that he loves Ellie, but also there was never any confusion. He feels like he was right, and Ellie is finally letting him back into her life. So Joel going to therapy and feigning misunderstanding in their fight over trying to get Ellie back without getting to the root of the problem is not the path that Game Joel takes. So I thought when I watched this episode that Joel did know what the rift between Ellie and Joel was because why would I assume that they would do it completely differently in the show than they do in the game? I thought he was just feigning misunderstanding, but no, he actually has no idea, which I will get into later why I dislike that. But it is, even if you take that out, even though Joel really had no idea why Ellie was mad at him, or, he says he has no idea why Ellie was so mad at him. Um, I really still don't like that he goes to therapy. That I don't know. It feels out of character even for the show version of Joel. I don't know. Show version of Joel is a different character and he is more emotional. And I do like how he acts in the therapy scene. I think Pedro Pascal does a very good job acting there. Like how he kind of like gets angry when Gail starts prodding at the like why like would Ellie be mad at you thing. That is very Joel, but that's not a situation that Joel would even be in the first place. So I don't love it. And then the show also teases the conversation about forgiveness, which is the porch scene, as it's so been dubbed. It has Joel sitting on the same porch with his guitar lit the same, and Ellie comes back and ignores him. I'll admit that was kind of cute. It's a little tease for fans of the game, like, I was like, oh, are we doing this now? And then they aren't. I would have been mad if they had that conversation at that point, but the fact that they aren't is good. Again, very funny looking back because they do have this conversation in this season, which is not good. Not good. I'll get into that later, but it's not good. And I was like, they faked us out. Like, oh, they're gonna do that later. Nope. Nope. Okay. I do not like that Joel is going to therapy. Again, I'm gonna talk about this. Joel would never go to therapy. I also don't like that the scene is in this because it feels lazy. For some reason, the therapist really wants Joel to own up to what he did. But by this point in the game, he already did. 2 years ago. Again, I know this didn't actually happen in the show, and I will go into that later, but when I wrote this, I had the assumption that Joel did actually own up to what he did. Joel in the game has a very deep understanding of the relationships around him. So it's very weird to hear Joel talk about his feelings. Even outside of it's weird to have Joel talk about his feelings. I don't love the use of therapy here because it feels lazy. It feels lazy to have a therapist here when we need the characters to express their emotions because we know that they will leave Jackson quickly and there's not going to be any long term anything going on with this therapist. Not to talk about The Sopranos, but The Sopranos has therapy in it. But the reason it works in that show is when you have a traditional tough guy going to therapy and talking about his emotions, is that the show is about Tony understanding himself more. Is Tony goes to therapy also for the entire runtime of the show. And he isn't completely honest with Dr. Melfi either. He brushes around the heavy aspects of his job. He's only honest with her at specific points. Therapy works for The Sopranos because it's a process. Tony doesn't learn everything about himself through therapy. It isn't a window to get this perfect picture of what Tony's emotional state is all the time. It's about working through his depression, his marriage, his children, his job, his violence, everything that makes him a person. Because one of the main story aspects of the show is Tony going to therapy, and therapy works. It is a way to slowly get an idea about the emotions of our main character. Therapy is what distinguishes The Sopranos also from others of its genre. Therapy exists in The Last of Us to give us 1.5 scenes to give our main characters a way to exposit their emotions to the audience. That is lazy. Throughout all of The Sopranos, you can never say that Tony is expositing his emotions. That, it's always like that Tony goes in to talk to Dr. Melfi and is like, I'm feeling sad today. Or, I don't understand why this is going on with my kids. He like brushes around a lot of things and he also talks like a real person. So, it's when you contrast the therapy scenes, they function very differently. Um, so it's really lazy for The Last of Us to have this scene in there to let us into the emotional state of the characters when that isn't in the game. And also, especially for some game like The Last of Us that has fantastic dialogue, it's organic, economical, and impactful. The game doesn't need a therapy scene to give you an insight into Joel's mental state right before he dies. We get that in the game, but not until the very end. Not until we have fought through absolute hell, not until Ellie has lost absolutely everything, are we gifted with Joel's mental state at the end. And the scene is short. It's around 4 minutes long, and we get absolutely everything communicated to us. We did not need a therapy scene where Joel talks about how he is sad that Ellie isn't talking to him and he might have done something to her, but we don't know what. We see it at the party, how sad Joel is when Ellie chastises him for helping, how relieved he is when she says that she wants to try to forgive him. Everything is communicated to us in very few words, and that makes it feel very organic and real. It is realistic that people only show slivers of themselves, especially when they are being their most vulnerable. Joel and Ellie are people who have been extremely traumatized and do not like to talk about how they feel. The two main points across both games that Joel and Ellie have actual, true, honest conversations with each other about their relationship are the catalysts for major change. The first game, when Ellie pokes the bear and brings up Sarah after running away, this conversation at the farmhouse where Ellie says, everyone who's cared for me has either died or left me, everyone fucking except for you. So that conversation is a hard conversation for the two of them to have, but it ultimately brings them closer. This was the porch scene between Ellie and Joel is the other conversation that was supposed to start everything changing again. This is supposed to bring them closer after Ellie iced him out for 2 years. And it is ever so tragic that we are told this information at the very end. Ellie thinks back on specific moments with Joel throughout the game that gives us insight into what she misses about him or what she might have been thinking about, the good and the bad. And only when she forgives Abby does she think about what Abby truly took from her. At her lowest moment, she thinks back on her final moment with Joel and gives us and her that new kind of reflection. Only at the end do we fully understand everything. That is so impactful. I absolutely loved the ending of the game because we waited to get this moment. In the show, by having this therapy scene and showing Joel having these strange moments of doubt or not understanding what's going on, it cheapens everything. Joel does not need therapy. We as an audience can pick up what is going on without it. It's lazy. Again. Okay, on to episode 2. This episode starts with another Abby scene, though this is one that is taken from the game and changed. Both scenes are dream sequences, but in the game, you play as teenage Abby as she goes through the Salt Lake City hospital and she finds her dad's body. You see her react to it. You see how Owen was there for her. Instead, the show tells you what Abby will find in there instead of showing it. I am finding that, again, this is the biggest issue in relation to Abby so far, is that the show is going against the cardinal rule for television/movies. Show, don't tell. The show is absolutely telling instead of showing. Why is it more effective for Abby to talk to herself in a dream and describes what happens to her dad? It evokes far more emotion in both the viewer and in Abby to walk into that room and find her dad's body. They are telling us Abby's motivation for killing Joel instead of showing us her motivations. They are having Abby monologue and spoon-feeding the information to the viewer instead of showing us how she feels. I saw someone say that Abby is like Syndrome from The Incredibles. That moment where he says, "You sly dog, you got me monologuing." At this point in the show, I thought that this was a problem in relation to Abby, but this is actually a problem related to everything that happens in the show or the season. Okay. There were 2 big scenes that they cut from this point in the game. The first scene that they cut is where you first start playing as Abby. Owen takes Abby outside and shows her Jackson, basically telling her what they found and what they're looking for. Through this conversation, we have no idea what either of their names are, who they are looking for, or why they're here. However, we learn that Abby and Owen have a bit of a romantic history. Not because they say anything explicit, but because you can read between the lines and pick up on it. Owen tells Abby that Mel is pregnant. We don't know who Mel is, but Abby is clearly very upset by this. As a result of this conversation, Abby decides to recklessly go to Jackson to try to find Joel. She mostly needs to get away from Owen and Mel, but that little tidbit gets you invested in their story, the story of the group, and a little introduction into the group dynamic. I really like this scene. I think it is really effective and a natural introduction to these characters. In the show, we do not have this. Are Abby and Owen still together? It seems like it from the way that she's touching him. Is Mel pregnant? I have no idea. She is pregnant. If they aren't, that would have been crazy, but yes, Mel is pregnant. Ellie killing Mel is basically her rock bottom and is important to her arc. So, sorry, this is me going on about why would they make Mel not pregnant. Mel is actually pregnant. But you still cut out the conversation where Abby and Owen are talking about Mel being pregnant. So Abby just got told by her ex, who she still has feelings for, that he got his girlfriend pregnant. And his girlfriend, Mel, is Abby's dad's former student. So in the show, she leaves the group because Abby thinks that she might have seen Joel. But in the game, it's an escape from her friends' lives and the kind of turmoil that she's feeling. The show's version here isn't bad. I don't really have a bone to pick with it necessarily. But I do wish that this conversation was still in the show. Especially since the show is so preoccupied with introducing us to literally everything about Abby right out of the gate. They can't extend that to Abby's friends, too. They are also actually very important. Okay, the other scene that they cut is Ellie and Dina finding Eugene's weed and sleeping together. They changed the show and made Ellie go on patrol with Jesse while Dina goes on patrol with Joel. I'll go into later why I don't like that, but for now I'll be focusing on just this cut scene. So in the game, Ellie and Dina are on patrol when a blizzard comes in hard. They find an old library and they find out that Eugene used to live there before he died. Eugene was Dina's old patrol partner who died of a stroke a little bit ago. They find a picture of Tommy and Eugene and the Fireflies together. They also find all the weed that Eugene was growing. They know that they are going to be holed up in there for a while as they wait for the storm to die out. So they decide to smoke some of the joints that Eugene had. They get high, have sex, and they open up to each other. They share their stories about their scars. Ellie tells Dina that she's immune, and Dina doesn't believe her. Jesse then comes and finds them and says that Joel and Tommy never checked in from their patrol. All three of them split up to try to find them, which is how Ellie finds the lodge and Joel dying. The scene is important to establishing Ellie and Dina's relationship. It gives them this really cute bonding scene, and also one that is mirrored with Abby and Owen later. But Ellie later proves to Dina that she is immune, so it's nice that Ellie gets to say, I told you so, and also give Ellie the opportunity to choose to be vulnerable with Dina and tell her that she's immune. And that Ellie already tried to talk to Dina about it. But it also establishes the foundation of their relationship, which is forever tied to Joel's death. It adds quite a bit to Ellie's guilt. Joel is being tortured and beaten to death, and Ellie is getting high and having sex. She was having a lot of fun, and now that memory and her foundation with Dina is forever tainted with the large, looming shadow of Joel's death. Joel's death forever changes the course of her relationship with Dina, and it even haunts its beginning. Ellie and Dina have no part of their relationship that is only for them. So, yeah, I think that the placement of the scene is really important. Even though I know we get it in episode 4, it's actually pretty important that it happens earlier. Because of everything that I just said, so. And then, that scene in the show sucked. I'll talk about that later. Okay. And then, again, I talked about it earlier, but I do not like Ellie here. She acts the same way that she did in the first part. She doesn't have the weight or gravity of growing up that Ellie did in the game. Ellie did have some of that carefree spirit, but you see that it all changes when she runs away to Salt Lake City and confronts Joel about the Fireflies. Ellie is not the same kid after that. Joel's actions took away any of the innocence of childhood from her, and she doesn't forgive him for it until his final night. And Ellie also does not smile for one single second after Joel dies in the game. I also hate that Ellie tells Jesse that her and Joel are okay in this episode, Like Jesse is like, "Oh, what are you and Joel up to? Whatever." And then Ellie is like, "Me and Joel are fine. We're always going to be fine. Don't worry about us." It's like, we're not actually supposed to know that information until literally 30 seconds until the end of the game. When I say the end of the game, I mean the end of the game. It's literally the last scene, and then we see Ellie put down the guitar and leave, and then cut to black. That's it. Like, end of the game. I hate that she said that Joel is Joel and she is her. Nothing will ever change, and they're okay. Um, so, when you have that flashback, when you actually get that piece of information, it's incredibly important. That scene is like what hinges the whole game, which is why I keep talking about it, because the build up to that scene is very important, and then the show really just kind of takes a shit on it. It changes. Having that scene at the very end means that you retroactively will look at every interaction between Ellie and Joel differently. I also hate that they're alluding to have made up already. I don't like it. I really don't. Okay, there's a big chunk of this episode that is dedicated to a fight scene where a fuck ton of clickers all go to Jackson. I do actually have enough of a lizard brain to enjoy this. This wasn't in the game, and though it was kind of alluded to Jackson having to deal with clickers while Joel died, the fight scene was choreographed in a very entertaining way. I like seeing how the city of Jackson prepares for events like this. I like the barrels of oil that they dropped over the edge of the wall so that they could burn the clickers. This feels like an homage to the Molotov cocktails that Owen throws at the clickers that are chasing Abby and Joel in the game. The horde that they fight in the show is much bigger than it is in the game, which is kind of funny. It seems like the show is going down to be doing these giant clicker hordes to meet their zombie quota, to make up for the fact that it didn't appear at the same frequency as they do in the game, which is really funny, again, that I say this because there are very few zombies in the rest of the show. Really very few. I feel like we have several episodes where we see absolutely zero. So, yeah, it is really funny that they're like, "Oh, fuck, actually, we need some zombies in our zombie show, so let's just have this really big horde scene." And then they're like, we don't need any more of them later. We hit the quota. Which is what they did in season 1, too. They did that big thing in Kansas City where they had all those clickers come out of the floor. Wow, there wasn't that many zombies in the rest of the show. It's like, this is cool, and I enjoyed it, and it was fun to watch, but, this doesn't meet the zombie quota. It really doesn't. You need a couple more interactions throughout. Just saying. Okay, the thing that I did not like in this scene was that Tommy was there. His boss fight with the bloater was fun, but he absolutely should have been with Joel. Making that change is legitimately bonkers to me. It is. I also note that it's interesting that Jackson has dogs. We know that the wolves have dogs in Seattle, and it's a whole thing that you have to kill the dogs. It sucks, but you have to kill them as Ellie. So will the wolves not have dogs? No, they won't, unless they change that in season 3, which it might. But we see no dogs outside of Jackson. So, if Jackson wants to have dogs, I got no beef with that. That's totally fine. And, I understand it would be a little bit tricky to adapt the whole how frequently you kill dogs as Ellie. But I was kind of expecting the wolf to have dogs too, and I was like, oh, like, are they going to kind of have both? Like, that'd be a little funky. But nope, only Jackson. And yeah, so I don't know if they're going to do that in season 3. Maybe. I also wrote, shot, and edited a whole video where I compared Joel's death in the show and in the game. I could not upload it no matter what I was changing because YouTube was picking up on the fact that I was using clips from The Last of Us show and was unhappy with that. So there is an over 2-hour long video of me breaking down everything that I every comparison kind of between the two scenes, but I can't show anyone, which sucks. I will put some of what I wrote here and adapt that for this format, but I'm a little bummed that I put all that work into that and nobody can see it. I won't go into as much detail as I did in that whole video. Obviously, this is not 10 hours, but I didn't want to write, obviously. I wrote like 17 pages of stuff for the last one, so I don't want to do all that again. Okay, so the Joel death scene, again, showcases the biggest issue that the show has been having so far. Scenes going on for far too long, far too much talking, characters talking too much about themselves and their reasoning for doing things, and the show sanitizing the ideas that were shown in the game. The show has Dina be here instead of Tommy, which we know now that Tommy doesn't really do anything that he does in the game. He goes to Seattle, but only barely. Tommy does not have any of the same anger that he does in the game. He does not go on a revenge mission. Instead, they have Dina here. That is another complaint that I have about the season, is that this is the Dina show. Everything revolves around her far more than any of the other characters. And that kind of starts here. She is given far more focus and attention than she did in the game. The decision to put her here instead of Tommy starts this chain reaction of Dina being the one having the revenge mission instead of Tommy or Ellie. Dina is given reason to go, and Dina is the one who wants revenge but flips the switch real quick at the end there, which I'll talk about later. But of course, the show sanitizes the whole death scene. They have Mel knock Dina out with some kind of anesthesia or sleeping drug, which is so stupid. In the game, Nora knocks Tommy out with a gun. Yes, that makes sense. Wasting what little you have of a very valuable drug to be nice to someone is stupid. Just knock them out. Like, that's far more the practical approach to things. And then they put the scene in this very big open room. In the game, it is claustrophobic and small. It feels like Joel is vastly outnumbered, and they don't have that here. The worst thing that they do in the scene, though, is that they have Abby talk for 15 years at Joel. She explains that he killed her father and how she feels about it, and she goes on, and Joel engages with her, which is just the scene from the game, but bloated without the impact. Abby doesn't tell Joel her life story because he doesn't need to hear it. She needs to kill him. Abby in the show waxes poetic about how she knows Joel, from his scar to his handsomeness to his age, and how she has been looking for him, how she found him, what he took from her. Abby in the game says Joel Miller. Joel had introduced himself as Joel, but when Abby says his full name, that communicates everything. She has more information than she was given, therefore she knows him and he is her target. Bam. Abby talks to Joel in the show for about 8 minutes. In the game, it is 3 sentences. The game delivers the exact same information as the show, but far more economically and organically, and not all at this point. The scene was really an indicator for how the season was going to be. I know I say that a lot, but that is really true here because this is a scene that you really needed to get right, and I don't think they did. So many of the same problems here plague every single other episode. Despite the gang's desire to put Dina out nicely and not have her watch, when Ellie comes barging in, they make her watch. Are you guys nice or not? Then Ellie crawls over to Joel to hold his hand, another thing that I hated. It is saying the quiet part out loud. Ellie in the game feels that loss immensely, but she doesn't get the closure or comfort of going over and holding his hand. She has to look at the violence of his mangled face, and that's it. That is the final moment that she gets with him. That is what she holds in her heart and her mind for the rest of the game. Abby and crew also leave immediately after Abby kills Joel to literally give Ellie a moment with Joel, which is far, far nicer than what happens in the game. In the game, Abby and crew leave because they believe that the town will be on top of them soon. But they knock Ellie out first. They don't care about Ellie at all. This kindness is not true to the message of the story. This is a mean story with unlikable characters that make difficult decisions. Every character here made the decision to be far nicer than they were in the game, and I hate that. That is boring and cowardly. If you are going to tell the story of The Last of Us 2, you cannot neuter it. You have to tell it warts and all. Everything that made it difficult, everything that made it controversial, that is what makes the story what it is. They took away the story's teeth. I know I said that before, but I mean it. Now it is just an empty husk of what used to be there. I have seen a lot of people say that episode 3 is the worst episode of the season so far, and I can't exactly disagree, but I do think a lot of the issues that were here were present in the previous episodes. One of the biggest changes that they did this episode was putting in a 3-month time skip. After Joel's death, Ellie spends a lot of time in the hospital dealing with broken ribs. That is dramatically different from the game and heavily impacts the themes of the story. Once again, we are weakening the ideas of the game. It is important that Ellie jumps into action immediately, that she does not sit around. She does not engage in the grieving process at all. The revenge mission is her grieving process. In the game, Ellie and Dina leave for Seattle the day after Joel dies. Another big change is that in the game, Tommy leaves first. Ellie and Tommy have a conversation the night of Joel's death where Tommy tells Ellie that he will talk to Maria about her budging on allowing more guys to go with them to Seattle. Tommy lies and leaves Maria a note, sneaking off. He asks Maria to not let Ellie leave. Maria goes against his wishes and lets Ellie and Dina take Shimmer, and then they leave. Sorry, Shimmer is the horse. This feels almost like a suicide mission for Ellie. She doesn't care if she lives or dies. It almost feels like she's expecting not to return to Jackson. She will do this at any cost. Dina loves Ellie and knows how much this means to her, and she also can see how much of a toll this has taken on Ellie and chooses to go and take care of her. She knows Ellie will need all the help and support that she can get. I couldn't find a screenshot with the whole thing, but Dina's saying, "You go, I go." In the game, a criticism that I've heard when in relation to Joel's death is that we have this stuff with Ellie, Dina, and Tommy, and then we immediately ruin all tension by immediately going to Seattle and having Ellie and Dina solve rope puzzles. I can't get too mad at that criticism, even though I understand that the game has to keep it moving, but that criticism, it's really funny if that criticism exists for the game. When the show takes that criticisms, they create, oh my god, takes that criticism and really cranks it up. This is one of the main issues that I have this season is that we are dragging shit way the fuck out. The way the game delivers the exact same information is always made way more economical and to the point. In the game, Tommy and Ellie are having a conversation the night of Joel's death, and Tommy says that in order to have the guys we'd need to do this smart, they'd be leaving Jackson vulnerable. And Ellie is like, "Is this you talking or is this Maria?" And then she's like, "What are you doing? You can't talk me out of this." And it's important that Tommy is the one taking the big picture, talking about the big picture and his family here, because at the farm, the roles are switched. It's Ellie thinking of her family and Tommy thinking of revenge. But we deliver the exact same information about the town being vulnerable if they take a group in 2 seconds. Ellie in the game doesn't care at all. It seems like she doesn't even really want a big group. I don't think that she is thinking that she will live to come back to Jackson, or she doesn't care if she lives or dies. She just needs to act. So by having this long, drawn-out council scene where someone in the crowd exposits the exact themes of the game and the results are the same, we've just wasted 15 minutes, and it really feels worse. This doesn't feel like the super tight and smart storytelling that is in the game. The story feels here the story here feels so bloated for no reason. The revenge mission here is not about being smart or thinking ahead, it's about reacting at any cost. Moving, going, anything to avoid sitting in silence. The show adds the 3-month time skip and the characters fucking around instead of moving, which really drags the pacing down quite a bit. I also do not like Catherine O'Hara here. She plays Gail the therapist. All she does is make Ellie and Tommy explicitly lay out their thoughts and feelings. There's no subtlety, there is no undertones, there's only them being incredibly direct. Sure, Ellie lies through the whole thing, but the lie is very obvious. You know exactly how Ellie in the game is feeling, and she is never talking to the audience explaining how she feels, even if it's a lie. Honestly, Ellie in the game doesn't really lie that frequently, and when she does, she tricks the player too. Because when Ellie goes with Jesse to look for Tommy, you want them together too. You want Ellie to tend to her friends, so you go along with it. And then when she leaves Jesse to go to the aquarium, you're like, oh, of course. There was no other path. I really hate that the characters in the show are spelling out exactly what they're feeling. It's lazy and not as effective as what the game does. So episode 3 is also the start of something strange. There is a power dynamic switch between Dina and Ellie. In the game, this was 1000% Ellie's crusade that she was leading and doing. Dina was there for Ellie to make sure she didn't kill herself in this crusade. Now, in the show, they are making Ellie's impulsiveness play like stupidity. Dina is the one who tells Ellie about the wolves in Seattle and where to go. Dina was also there when Joel died. Dina is the one who arranges the horse and packs everything. Dina almost has more of a reason to go than Ellie does. Dina is the one who brings this proposition to Ellie about going. It is very strange to have Dina be in a leadership position and not Ellie. It is a change that I do not like at all. This is Ellie's quest. I understand wanting to give Dina a more active role in the story, but Dina not being active is actually a part of the story. I've seen people on the internet say that a downside of the game is that Dina has no agency, which I disagree with. Dina absolutely does have agency. I think what they mean is that Dina doesn't have much decision making on like the big stuff, which is important. That is the point. In Ellie's quest for revenge, she drags along the people she loves and always pushes them away. Dina is collateral in that. And Dina is the best thing that has happened to Ellie, and Ellie cannot function when she has this revenge quest hanging over her head. Ellie ruins the best thing that she has going for her in her life because she cannot move on from Joel's death. This is giving Dina in the show more to do has made her be the one in charge. This is not a dynamic that I like. I cannot see this Dina giving up and being ready to settle down in the farm, or Ellie being unable to talk about her grief because it's on a different level for her. These are essential themes to the game story, so I do not like that they are changing them. I feel like it makes a far weaker story. I also do not like that we are being introduced to the Seraphites already in episode 3, and it's in this incredibly exposition heavy scene. We are being told what the whistles mean and that their profit isn't magic, which is really weird because you absolutely get the sense in the game that there is no wavering among the followers at all. All of them are so very devoted so that when someone deviates, they are hunted down and killed. I don't like that it's this dad talking to a little girl, obviously trying to mirror Joel and Ellie, whatever. They're humanizing the scars, which I find to be a little strange because this is so early. What humanizes the scars is Lev and Yara, not these two randos who we don't give a fuck about. It's too early to be doing this. It seems like they're trying to maybe have like a switch up where like you think that the wolves are the super bad guys and then the scars are the good guys. I don't know why they're doing that. It's to try to get some kind of switch up at some point in this story because they already laid out absolutely everything about Abby right off the bat. But also, I really don't like that they are introducing this now because this is not important to Ellie. We don't need to learn about them right now. We won't get that moment of fear when you encounter this new group who hangs and guts people and then starts whistling to each other. This is a scary fight as Ellie, and then you get more in depth when you play as Abby. They are weakening so many plot lines in order to be more palatable, and I think and that is something that I really hate. This is a game that takes so many risks and doesn't hold your hand through any of it. The show holds your hand through absolutely everything. Also, why is Seth getting a redemption arc? I do not give one single fuck about this character. Why is Seth the one who lets them out? I like that it's Maria in the game who lets them out, and she is telling them to make sure that Tommy doesn't die. Everyone here is just trying to make sure that the two most self-destructive people, Tommy and Ellie, don't die. Maria doesn't want Tommy to die, and Dina and Jesse don't want Ellie to die, and Tommy too. Seth being the one to let them out really doesn't add or contribute to anything. Also, Seth gives Ellie his rifle, and then we do not see Ellie use it one single time throughout the entire season, which is hilarious. And then I also had the feeling that Tommy wasn't going, and I also said I have a feeling that he is, and it will be to save Ellie, which is lame, which is funny because I was correct. I also really do not like Ellie and Dina's conversation in the tent. In the game, this is far more flirty, and also Dina is incredibly devoted to Ellie. Dina has been pining for Ellie for years, so as soon as they kiss at the dance, that's it. The show needs Dina to go back to Jesse because we need Dina to be pregnant, and for some reason they needed this 3-month time skip. But, I wasn't worried about Dina and Ellie not getting together, but I do not like the placement of the scene because Ellie should not be in the right headspace to start a relationship right now. I like it far better that this happens while Joel dies. It is the last, happy moment that Ellie has for the rest of the game. And that is so much stronger of an idea to have Ellie and Dina's relationship always be tied to Joel. Now they are dragging it out, again, for absolutely no reason. Dina saying she isn't gay is kind of annoying. I don't like that she went back to Jesse. Dina in the show is a very different character, and I do not like the changes. I really don't like that we are, again, dragging out something that was done far more efficiently in the game. And also, they don't have the same chemistry as they do in the game. I just kind of feel the connection more between Ellie and Dina in the game. It's not like the characters in the show don't have any chemistry. It's just, I don't know, you feel it a lot more in the game, between Ellie and Dina. It's just like little moments, that you get that make them feel more real. Um, I was very surprised at this point that they weren't together, because I just expected that they would be. Uh, it is, again, a pointless change that weakens the themes of the game for absolutely no reason. A slow burn doesn't mean that you are adding depth to a relationship. It is important that their relationship starts on the worst day of Ellie's life, forever tainting that entire relationship. Their entire relationship revolves around Joel's death. I know I said that already, but I feel the need to point it out here. So it really feels unrealistic that, hey Ellie, do you remember you just watched your dad get like beaten to death right in front of you? Like how can you be in the like happy, like in the headspace to be like, yeah, I could start a relationship right now? That really doesn't make any sense. Okay, and also, why do Ellie and Dina's hair look so clean? And this attributes, to them totally, but the hair was something that really I took issue with. Their clothes are too clean too, their faces are too clean too, but the hair is the thing. It's Ellie's hair has been clearly straightened, and Dina also has brought her Dyson Airwrap with her because she has this really nice beachy blowout the entire time. Why is her hair down also this whole season? Like, in the game, Dina's hair is up and Ellie's is half up. Like, their hair is out of their face. It's realistic. Every female character has their hair out of their face because it needs to be. But, the show is so obsessed with realism and, oh, we got to make sure this thing is realistic. But then Dina has her hair down and blown out the whole time. That doesn't make any sense. This is what Ellie and Dina's hair looked like in the game. Like, Dina's hair looks like normal hair, like a normal wavy kind of pattern, and Ellie's hair looks like normal hair. I really dislike the styling on Ellie's hair. I don't like the kind of slick back thing that they're doing. I think that, I like Ellie's kind of messier hair that she has in the game and the little bit of bang that she has. Whereas, Dina too, it's just like, I mean, come on. That's really bad. The blowout, that's really bad. Okay. I feel like the first season was changing things to fit the medium because you can't have gameplay. The Bill and Frank story was the biggest change I feel like they had in season 1, and I thought that it worked really well because this section of the game is basically only gameplay. So you had to have a little bit more story to make up for that fact. Little things are changed here and there, but none of the characters sacrifice the overall plot of the game or the character arcs. If you watch my video, I have my complaints about Joel and Ellie, but in comparison to this, it feels pretty minor. It was more like I could sense that something was coming, which I was right about. The season, they are changing things for no reason, which is just terrible. They're stretching things out and changing things just to change them. Changing in Ellie and Dina's relationship timeline is not because of the medium change. Having Tommy go to Seattle later is not because of the medium change. This 3-month time skip necessitating Dina going back to Jesse if she was going to be pregnant, which just means that the time skip is messy. What's crazy is Dina doesn't even get the same kind of morning sickness that she does in the game. So there really isn't that much of a reason for her to even be pregnant. The pregnancy drives a wedge between her and Ellie, and in the show, it brings them together even more. The pregnancy is only there because it was in the game. It does not have the same narrative purpose that it does in the show. It is important that Ellie goes to Seattle for vengeance, and Dina is going for Ellie. It establishes their entire relationship dynamic, which is ultimately not sustainable. Dina is willing to forgive almost everything, putting herself through so much because of how much she loves Ellie. There is no confusion. There is no waffling. How the fuck are they supposed to do the farmhouse stuff if this is how their relationship dynamic is? They have Ellie rate the kiss, too, in the show instead of Dina. And again, for some reason, flipping their relationship dynamic. If Tommy is really going to Seattle to protect Ellie instead of looking for his own vengeance, which I was saying that would be terrible, which is funny because that's exactly what happens. Episode 3 continues the problem of the show, spelling out every theme and an idea very blatantly and basically. Okay, on to episode 4. I actually think that episode 4 was the least bad episode of the show up until that point. I feel like the 2 episodes that I liked the most were probably episodes 4 and 6, even though I had issues with both. But this is the first episode where I didn't fully hate the whole thing, so I was like, hey, I'll take it. I was not mad at episode 4 until the ending, which I will get to. But we actually are introduced to the first character that I like this season, which is Isaac. Yes, he is here too early. Yes, some of the exposition that he delivers is a little clunky, but he feels accurate to his game self. Maybe that's because he's played by the same person, but it really feels like the writing is different for Isaac. It's decent. They are doing with Isaac, what I wanted for this whole season. They are expanding on his story while not compromising who he is as a person. I like his Fedra backstory. Josh Peck was definitely a jump scare, but I liked that whole scene. I didn't know where it was going to go, and I liked it. I was like, whoa, Isaac was in Fedra? Like, that's a little crazy. And then he kills all those guys in the Fedra truck. That was also crazy. I really liked that scene. I thought it was really well done. I thought it gave Isaac a lot of interesting flavor and backstory that we don't get from him in the game. And I like that he met the former leader of the Wolves. I think that's interesting. And I think it really does a good job at establishing Isaac's morals. And then we get to expand on him then when he interrogates the Scar later in the episode. This is a much better introduction to the Scars. I wish we hadn't had that scene with the dad and daughter in episode 3. I wish we had just started with this. I think that would be a little cool. I think that would be cool. Or maybe if you want to do something subtle, which I know the season is allergic to, but I think kind of a cool way to have an almost introduction to the Scars is you could have in episode 3, you could have Ellie and Dina discover all the bodies. I think that's fine. You could have maybe a body hung up and gutted. You could have a symbol of the Seraphites, maybe their prophet, a painting of the prophet, like how you would see in the game. Like a really kind of subtle introduction to who the Seraphites are as a group. And then your first time actually hearing one talk is in the scene with Isaac, because that is how they act in the game. The Scars in this conversation with him. I really liked this scene. This was probably one of my favorite scenes in the whole season, which I don't hear enough people talking about. But I did really like this scene. That I think that this is a really good way to introduce how super intense the Scars are about their ideology and about kind of who they are. I liked Isaac's whole speech about the cooking pans. I thought that was cool. That felt very much like him. And again, this is where the show operates at its best, and that's what they figured out what worked in season 1, is when it expands on ideas that we have seen in the game. We don't get much from Isaac in the game. We really only get a couple scenes with him. But from the little that we do see from him, we know that he's an intense guy, but also a ruthless and loyal leader. And at any point, he wants the fighting to be over at any and all costs. We changed the conversation that Abby and Mel have about the Scar truce and give that to Isaac, which I'm okay with. There are other ways in the show to kind of that conversation being between Abby and Mel wasn't like super important. It was more important for us to understand like the state of the war between the Scars and the Wolves. So I'm fine with getting that conversation to Isaac. There are other ways to show that was also kind of a way to show that Mel is different from the group. I think there are other ways to do that, which we'll cross that bridge when we go to season 3. I was just really enjoying these 2 scenes that we got with Isaac, which I gotta say is a first for the season. There really hasn't been much else about the season that I have liked, except for the big fight scene in episode 2. The kindest praise that I could give it was that it didn't make me too mad. But as much as I like Isaac here, I still think that his introduction is far too early. I wish we got to see these scenes with him just later. When we are ready to focus more on Abby and the Wolves in their war with the Seraphites. This war isn't important outside of Abby's story, So I think starting it now could lead to disinterest among viewers about this conflict. Half introducing a story element could lead viewers to not caring now, and in season 3 too, when it becomes more important. I think they introduced Isaac and the Seraphites to us now to try to get us invested in their war, so that when season 3 comes, and we're with Abby, it can expand on something that we already are semi-invested in. But I don't think it really works. By half showing the fight, it makes the viewer less invested in the overall story. The war between them isn't even really that important. Why they are fighting or anything is most important in relation to Abby, not outside of her. So when you remove her from that element and start it in Ellie's section, it means we are less invested. Ellie is not involved in this war at all, and Abby is. So we learn about the fighting and everything through her perspective, which makes us invested in her and the war. But you aren't that invested in the war in the game. You aren't like, oh, I want the wolves to win, or oh, I want the scars to win. You just don't want Abby or her friends to die. The war is just a backdrop to everything going on with Abby and her friends. The war by itself isn't very interesting or important to the story, so by giving it more focus in this, it takes away from the point that I think Naughty Dog was trying to make, which is that cycles of violence are everywhere, on the micro scale with Ellie and Abby, and the macro with the wolves and the scars. Abby becomes disillusioned with the war quickly, which leads to us seeing it as pointless as well. Pointless conflict and cyclical violence that ends with both sides killing each other for no reason. It is a warning of what could happen with Ellie and Abby, making Ellie's decision to end the cycle at the end that much more impactful, because we have seen what happens when no one backs down, and that means that everyone dies. The show deciding to highlight that war now will lead to people not really caring about it that much. It is a weak storyline in a season of weak storylines. Okay, and then we get this guitar shop scene with Ellie and Dina in episode 4, which is mostly fine. In the game, Ellie starts playing Take On Me Take Me On. Take On Me. That's wrong. As a way to flirt kind of directly with Dina. They are already together at this point, and so it takes on a slightly different tone. Here, Ellie is shy about it, and you're supposed to watch Dina fall in love with Ellie, which is fine. If they want to do a delayed, relationship, whatever, like these two scenes having slightly different connotations, whatever, it's fine. The scene also looks very good. Like, this is the scene in the game, and then this is the scene in the show. It looks very similar. It looks very good. We skip finding the guy who Tommy tortured and killed, obviously since Tommy isn't here, which is lame. Whatever. Okay, we also skip the elementary school mission here. In the game, Ellie and Dina are riding around after the music shop, before a bomb goes off, killing Shimmer, and Ellie gets kidnapped by the wolves. She's then face to face with Jordan, the guy who she cut across the face, who was there when Joel died. He is not a character on the show. Ellie is tied up, and then Dina saves the day, shooting a wolf through the sunroof, and Ellie kills Jordan. Ellie and Dina then have to fight their way out. That is when Ellie finds the pictures of all the Seattle crew, and now she has names to faces for everyone she's been looking for. Because before this moment, she did not know Abby's name. The elementary school is an important mood setter. It makes you think that this revenge mission is going to go how you think it is. Ellie will systematically kill all of the Seattle crew. Dina will help her with it. Then after that, you find out that it isn't going to be that way. They find Leah's picture and a note that she left to Jordan saying that she's at the TV station, causing Ellie and Dina to go in search of her. At the TV station, they find that the scars have strung up and gutted a lot of the wolves, and they also find Leah's body. She was shot full of arrows and killed by scars. These two moments are important because Ellie gets to have a taste of revenge by killing Jordan, the thing that she wants so badly, and then she doesn't get that with Leah, and it feels worse. When they find Leah's body, Ellie is upset that she wasn't the one to kill her, and Dina has to remind her that the most important thing is that she's dead. There have been these frustrating moments throughout the day for Ellie where her revenge mission has not gone exactly how she thought it would. Tommy got one kill, Ellie got another, and then someone completely unrelated got to kill one of her targets. All of these frustrations build up inside Ellie so that when Dina tells Ellie that she's pregnant at the end of the day, Ellie is upset at Dina and calls her a burden. Because this was supposed to be Ellie's revenge mission, and she had a taste of it and how good it must have felt. But it hasn't gone how she wanted, and now it's going to be much harder now that Dina's pregnant. These little moments build up to an argument that demonstrates how completely obsessed Ellie is with this mission. All she wants is to get to Abby and kill all of her friends along the way because she has to do right by Joel. After everything we've done, everything I've done, it can't all be for nothing. Sorry, this is the only image that I could find of the scene. That's a little aesthetic edit, not screenshot from the game. Sorry. But this is the thing that drives Ellie through all of this. After everything we've done, it can't all be for nothing. So she lashes out at Dina when this mission isn't going to go exactly as she thought it would, the person that she loves. This is a moment where you're like, whoa, Ellie, maybe that was a little uncalled for. But you also are right there with her in the revenge headspace. You want to kill Abby just as much as Ellie does. You and Ellie recognize that Dina being pregnant will cause issues. The show does the immunity reveal sequence very differently. Ellie reveals to Dina that she is immune in the game in a different way. There are spores in the game, and during the tunnel segment, Ellie's mask breaks. Dina is going to give Ellie her mask, killing herself, but Ellie stops her and shows that she's immune. Information delivered very quickly. Minor aside, in the TV show and in the tunnels, Ellie and Dina each kill one person in the show, and Ellie doesn't feel anywhere near as capable or angry as she does in the game. It is fun and hard in the game to try to fight the clickers and the humans at the same time and try to pit them against each other, and we don't really see that. And in the show, there is a clicker coming from Dina and Ellie, and Ellie puts her arm out to get bit, so that it's her instead of Dina. Then they find the theater, and Ellie and Dina have this whole drawn-out long conversation where Ellie tries to communicate that she's immune, but she takes the longest way possible to convey that information. Fine, whatever. These changes up to this point have been mostly minor. But then, when Ellie proves that she isn't immune with time, Dina tells her that she's pregnant, and then Dina kisses her, and they have sex. What? That is literally the opposite reaction that Game Ellie has in this exact moment. Ellie lashes out, finds a guitar, sleeps alone, and dreams of Joel. In the show, Ellie has sex and immediately accepts immediately that Dina is pregnant and is like, I'm going to be a dad. That ever so stupid line that has been memed on quite a bit. Ellie is so accepting so quickly. It's like the writers are afraid to make the audience feel any negative emotions towards any of the main characters, Abby included, and they can't have Ellie be too mean because then people might not like her anymore. That is so lame and cowardly. The Last of Us 1 is a story that most people can get on board with. The Last of Us 2 is a very risky story that not everyone can get on board with. The Last of Us 2 is a story filled with rage. This is the poster. What emotion is Ellie conveying here? It's not this one. It's a very different emotion. The Last of Us 2 is a story about anger, rage, all that. Ellie in the show feels no rage. It's like that meme that's like, where is your rage? Rage. Where is it? It feels like she hasn't changed at all after Joel's death, and she is acting literally exactly the same as she did before he died. The episode really nails home something that I really hate about this season. Ellie, I know I've talked about this before, but I'm going to talk about it more here. I thought that Ellie was immune. I already talked about how I thought that Ellie was immature and acted far younger than her game counterpart, but this episode really cranks it up. Ellie is nice. She is far nicer. She doesn't have any of the meanness or the grit or anger or sadness that Ellie in the game does. These are core traits to her personality, so to wash them all away to make an Ellie that is much nicer is annoying. She just got told that her revenge mission is going to be much harder than she thought it was going to be, and she's like, yay! That is a complete misunderstanding of Ellie as a character. I truly don't understand how the writers thought that this was an okay change to make. Yeah, let's just make The Last of Us 2, but what if we made it so much happier? We don't want anyone to feel too many negative emotions, and I really truly hate that. It is so supremely stupid. This is a game about misery, rage, and obsession. Do not adapt this story if you want to soften the themes to make it more palatable. I cannot see this Ellie doing anything remotely the same that Endgame Ellie does. I cannot imagine this Ellie abandoning Dina and JJ to finish the quest that she is so obsessed with. This does not feel like an Ellie that is obsessed. This feels like an Ellie that is here with her new girlfriend, Dina, helping Dina do what she wants to do. Where is your rage, Ellie? And again, I use the same image that I used in the slide before because this is the most important image of the game. This is literally the cover art of the game. Come on. And then at the end, Dina says she's going to go, and then she gets really sick like she did in the game, which did not happen in the show. They make the radio that they give them portable, so there's no need for sick Dina to stay behind and chart everything out anymore. So is Dina just going to go with Ellie for all of it? Yeah, basically. She's gonna puke a little bit here and there, and that's it. Yep, that is it. They're really butchering so many of the themes that they made in the game, so strong in favor of a nicer story. This season, it's just Joel's death feels like it's on the back burner for everything that happens in this scene. Very weird. Okay, on to episode 5. We get this opening scene where the WLF are talking about encountering spores in the hospital basement for the first time. They are introducing spores at this point in the show, which I find a little funny because they were so insistent that they weren't going to do spores in season 1, even though they knew that this was going to happen in season 2. The Last of Us 2 was out already by the time that they made The Last of Us 1 TV show. So they knew that there was this scene where spores were important, but still they insisted that no spores. Because of course there's no way to do the Nora scene without the spores. I listened to the podcast. I stopped after this episode because I can't take it anymore. But Neil Druckmann said that the scene felt very Chernobyl-y, where the two characters are talking about the spores in the basement. And Craig Mason joked that it's because they were in a room smoking together, and that's all that Chernobyl is, which I thought was funny. But I do think that the scene does feel a little like Chernobyl. I think Neil Druckmann's right there. And that is what I like Craig Mason's writing the best, is when he is alluding to great danger, because I think that he can do that really well, especially in basements. Haha. I was a little surprised that we are teasing the Rat King already, but I guess that's only really a tease if you already know what's down there. The scene itself was fine. One very surprising thing is that Dina isn't sick. In the game, by this point, she is extremely sick with morning sickness. She cannot stop throwing up and is just all around doing very badly. They find a radio at the movie theater, and then they can, or not the movie theater, just the regular theater, that they can use to tap into the WLF radio signals. Dina, not wanting to be a burden to Ellie, has spent all night puking, but also trying to figure out where Abby is through this radio. She figures out what their number-based system is for dividing up the city, and they hear a lot of chatter about a single male trespasser. Ellie, thinking that it's Tommy, who has been in Seattle longer than her and Dina, and they know is somewhere around there, decides that she has to go track down whoever it is. Dina is much too sick to go, so she decides to stay behind and continue to listen to the radio and maybe sleep. Through going to the neighborhood Hillcrest, which is where the WLF was indicating that there was this single male trespasser, she eventually runs into Jesse. She has been looking for him and follows the most noise and finds him. Jesse goes back with them to the, why did I say the hotel? Not the hotel, the theater. It is a way for the player to not have Dina's help anymore, but it also further isolates Ellie from the only person who has been supporting her through this. Dina is too sick to help Ellie. Dina cannot be there in the way that Ellie needs her to be right now because she is pregnant. Ellie's fear has come true. Everything the game does very slowly and steadily draws a wedge between Ellie and Dina, pushing Ellie further towards revenge and further away from Dina. Dina being sick and forcing Ellie to go out on her own is another way that the game is going to step further into that divide. That even though they love each other, the divide grows and grows. Then Ellie finds Jesse, not Tommy, someone who she knows she sees eye to eye on this revenge issue, but still her friend nonetheless. She feels complicated emotions seeing him, but they are still friends beneath everything. Now in the show, Dina is the smart one. She listens to the radio because she wants to exact her revenge. She triangulates the positions of everyone. She says that they talk too much. They over-explain why the wolves are talking on the radios without much code. In the game, they do talk in code, and it takes Dina hours to figure out where they are or what they are talking about. But no, they need to explain here already that the Scars don't use technology, which is weird. We can figure that out when we see how they dress and act and everything. We didn't need it explained, but whatever. Dina is the one doing all of the work here, and in this scene, she indirectly calls Ellie stupid. No one would ever call Ellie in the game stupid. She is far from stupid. She is extremely capable and has a lot of survival instincts and skills. She knows how to navigate this world. It's very strange. I keep getting the feeling while watching this episode that this is Dina's mission far more than it is Ellie's. And Ellie is just there as Dina's little accessory because Dina wants her there. This really does not feel like Ellie's quest. I know I used the same picture of her, but still. In the game, of course, it does not feel that way. Ellie continues to be goofy in episode 5, which I hate. Ellie in the second game is not goofy for 1 second. She doesn't crack jokes. She doesn't smile. She does not have a good time. Ellie in the show is really enjoying her Seattle vacation with her new girlfriend. So Ellie, after the whole radio whatever, Ellie wanders off and finds a guitar in the theater and starts to play Future Days by Pearl Jam, which I found out that Craig Mason didn't even want her to sing Future Days, which is crazy because like that's the whole like thesis of the game. If I ever were to lose you, I'd surely lose myself. Like that's the whole thing. That's the whole point. That's the whole thing of the game. So the fact that Craig Mason didn't even want it in there is like, my guy, really? Anyway, Ellie goes and starts to play Future Days. However, there are some subtle differences between this moment in the game and in the show. I'm going to get real nitpicky here, but that's just kind of what I do. In the game, Ellie and Dina have just fought about Dina revealing that she is pregnant. Ellie wanders into this theater to have a moment alone. She finds the guitar and sits in one of the audience chairs. This is a moment just for her and no one else. She's not on stage performing. She's having a quiet moment of reflection where she thinks back on when Joel performed that song for her years ago at the beginning of the game. She then stops and thinks about when Joel took her to the museum for her birthday. She's using this time to connect with Joel in a quiet moment that is just for her, and then she thinks of her favorite memory of their time together, tinged with the reason that they stopped talking in the first place. She is soothing herself while also poking the bruise. Ellie in the show is extremely happy at this moment, but she still picks up the guitar and gets on stage. But she stops when Dina comes in. This is a cute scene, but it doesn't have any of the melancholy, conflict, or reflection that it did in the game, which, as always, I find to be the weaker version of the story. Dina's blowout in this scene is crazy. Her hair looks so good. It looks so beautiful. Her clothes are also so clean. Ellie's hair is very nice and clean. Her clothes are very clean. Dina also gives us the story of her mother and sister's death. I was kind of hoping we would have an episode of backstory, like how we did for Bill and Frank. I was honestly expecting it. But I guess Dina in the show isn't Jewish, so maybe they couldn't have that element there anymore, and they didn't want to expand on it, I guess. But I still thought that this was where they would go. This scene, again, makes Dina feel like the main character. She's expressing her past experience with revenge and great grief. She was there when Joel died. She is leading them on this quest to find Abby and the wolves. She expresses a lot of anger and rage in the scene, something that has been notably missing from Ellie. Ellie, supposedly the main character. Then they go to this warehouse that has a bunch of stalkers, and they are quickly overwhelmed by them. Then Jesse comes in and saves the day. I think this is a far weaker version of events than what happened in the game. I am like a broken record. I say that all the fucking time, but it's true, I swear. This scene is like magic. Jesse appears out of thin air, finding them at the exact right moment to save them from being torn apart by stalkers. This feels like a movie. Feels like Ellie and Dina have main character plot armor. In the game, it is far more organic. Ellie hears the WLF talking about a lone male trespasser. She hunts him down to the neighborhood. So when they finally meet up, it doesn't feel like it came out of nowhere. This also makes Ellie feel so much less capable. So far, she's killed one person while being in Seattle and maybe a clicker or two. Ellie basically becomes John Wick in the game. Now, I know that the show is going through realism, but that doesn't mean that Ellie becomes incapable. She's supposedly being trained and given experience fighting clickers. Like, really? She can't handle this? In the game, she absolutely could. It makes it feel like Ellie is accomplishing less. Not to sound too woke, but it is low-key misogynistic to take a female character who was extremely capable and didn't need saving and turn her into someone weak and who needs to be saved by another man. Just saying. Jesse also makes a comment that he's here with Tommy, which I just know that next week we're going to see that Tommy and Jesse came to save Ellie and Dina. Tommy has no revenge mission of his own. I really don't know why they changed that. I really hate that change. I really don't know why they could have thought that was a good idea. Okay, then they run into Scars in the woods. This is similar in the game, but it's Ellie by herself who runs into them, and in the show it's Ellie, Dina, and Jesse. That's inconsequential. It's fine, whatever. The scene goes mostly the same, but Dina gets shot in the leg with an arrow. Ellie in the show gets shot in the shoulder with an arrow. That's fine, whatever. Then Ellie teleports to the hospital, and she's right in the room with Nora. In the game, it is a pain in the ass to get to the hospital. You have to kill a lot of wolves to get inside and find Nora. But nope, no build up, just immediately with Nora. Kind of annoying, but whatever. A lot of the Nora scene is similar to the game. Their conversation is similar, but the end goal is the same. But there are still a lot of minor changes that happen in the scene that I don't like. The main change is that I don't like that Nora tells Ellie that Abby's dad is the doctor. In the game, or is the doctor who was going to make the vaccine that Joel kills. In the game, Ellie never finds out that Abby's dad was the doctor. It is important that Ellie goes through her journey within herself to forgive Abby without knowing that crucial piece of information. Ellie finds peace within herself and extends that to Abby based only on the couple of pieces of information that Ellie knows. It is far more about where she is with herself than anything about Abby as a person. So now that Ellie knows, it is going to be far more generic and easy when Ellie forgives Abby. If that even happens, I don't know. They're fucking doing so many different things. So, it's gonna suck. Anyway, hey Craig, I don't know if you know this, but Ellie's forgiveness actually has nothing to do with Abby at all, and everything to do with her and Joel. She chooses to end the revenge mission for her own sake. The exact reasons why Abby did it do not matter to Ellie at all. She gets into this for Joel and leaves for herself. She chooses not to go through with it because this is the best path forward for her to heal. Ellie extends her final gift meant for Joel to his killer instead, putting Joel's life and sins to bed forever. Again, Abby herself stopped mattering to Ellie after she killed Joel. In the game, I think even if Ellie did know that Joel killed Abby's dad, it would matter very little to her. It would not affect her decision-making and the revenge or the forgiveness. Telling Ellie in the show will make it matter in the end. I know it will, which sucks, and again, feels far weaker. Okay, I also do not like how the scene is, because it is so directly from the game. Ellie in the game is in a very different place emotionally than Ellie is in the show. Ellie in the game is far more outwardly violent and angry than Ellie is in the show. Ellie in the show becomes this violent, being this violent and cruel towards Nora, feels incredibly out of place because there was no build up to it. As Ellie in the game, you have been killing a ton of people by this point. You and Ellie are very familiar with death and murder. So when Ellie cranks it up a notch and tortures Nora to death, basically, it feels like a natural step up from what we have been doing, but not like a dramatic jump. Ellie in the show has killed one person before this and has been extremely happy this episode, so it doesn't feel like a natural progression of events. Ellie in the game embodies the idea of my guy Luthen. Everyone go watch Andor. My guy Luthen, who says, I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I looked down, there was no longer any ground beneath my feet. That is the idea that Ellie embodies in the game. The moment with Nora is when she looks down and sees no more ground beneath her feet. She has been following this natural progression of violence and finally has this breaking point. This traumatizing moment where she has to face what she has become. Even while she's doing it, you can sense that she has a little horror in what she's doing, and then she really feels it later. Ellie in the show has none of that. She is eager to kill Nora and goes right into hitting her. While we haven't seen the fallout yet or how Ellie feels, which we don't really, not really, a little bit, but not much. I was talking to a friend about season 1 of the show, and he said that Joel killing everyone in the hospital felt out of left field because you don't see Joel killing people on the scale that he does in the game. That felt like a buildup of violence to this big moment that when you don't have those little moments to add up to, it doesn't feel earned. And I think that same principle applies here. It isn't earned. Another nitpick that I have with this scene is that Nora is the one who goes down to the basement herself. She didn't need to go down there. She knew there were spores down there, but she still jumps down the elevator because she feels like she is being cornered. Then Ellie goes down to follow her. In the game, it is a deliberate decision by Ellie to pull herself and Nora down into the basement. They are surrounded by wolves, and Ellie sees the hole in the floor and knows that she will be okay and that Nora will die. She is smart. She is using her immunity to her advantage to give her and Nora the ability to be uninterrupted. Here, Ellie just kind of stumbles upon it. There isn't any kind of plan or smarts. It's Nora being strangely stupid and Ellie going after her. Again, not earned in the same way. But since Ellie doesn't know about spores, they couldn't have had it be the same. This is minor, but it diminishes a small moment where Ellie shows how smart she is. Okay, on to episode 6. We finally got some scenes that I like again. Thank God. Okay. I was initially apprehensive about this flashback that starts with Joel and Tommy and their dad, who we never hear or see of at all in the game. But I actually like this scene. It establishes the cycle of violence that becomes something that Joel didn't start or finish. That you keep hoping that your kids will be better than you, and in some ways, Ellie is better and worse. Ellie leaves Dina, but stops the cycle of violence. I actually like that being established here. It's interesting. This is a tone setter for the episode because this is the only episode of the season that actually has some subtlety to it. This is the only episode that establishes new ideas that feel in line and expand upon the themes of the game, which I feel like this is what this scene does. It expands on ideas that we have in the game, but does it in like this scene is pretty cool. I liked it. I thought it was pretty cool. I thought it was well done. Okay, I have a lot of minor gripes with this episode until the ending, which I have major gripes with. It is funny that this is now the second time I have said this because I said that about episode 4 and now I say that about episode 6. You can take these minor gripes with a grain of salt. I say this as a true lover of the game. But I really do not like how open and affectionate Joel and Ellie are with each other in the show. When she burns herself with the chemical burn to get rid of the bite mark, Joel hugs her and kisses her head. We don't see how Joel reacted to this moment in the game, but I bet he was a lot more restrained and probably angry that Ellie would hurt herself. By the time the second game starts, Ellie has already burned herself. Joel and Ellie's relationship has so much unsaid, and it's a lot more complex than straightforward affection. We only see Joel hug Ellie after she has run away to Salt Lake City, and Joel knows that he fucked up. It's an attempt to calm her down or to avoid the storm that is brewing, which we see him do in the first game as well. Joel will be emotional and vulnerable with Ellie when he feels like he's fucked up or he has something that he has to make up for. Because after everything that happened in the hospital in the first game, that is the first time that Joel talks to Ellie about Sarah. That is, Joel realizes that he fucked up, and so he's like, oh, I gotta give her a little bit of emotional vulnerability to kind of make up for this. So he talks to her about Sarah. Then, in this moment, he knows he fucked up. He knows that Ellie found something. He knows that she's pissed. He knows. And then he's emotionally vulnerable with her to try to make up for it. So that is something that we have seen Joel do. So I feel like it's important that we see Joel be this openly affectionate only when he's trying to make up for something. And then the show just kind of has Joel hug Ellie. Just because she was hurt and oh well. Oh well, okay. She has been also Ellie has been living in the garage the whole time that they are in that house. So it's like they're in the house in Jackson. Ellie never has a bedroom in the house. She always lives in the garage. She always kind of wanted her own space. It's not a bad change, just a change that I'm noting. The game also opens with Joel singing Future Days to Ellie, so it's kind of surprising that the show is doing this now in episode 6. The show has been doing everything sooner than it happened in the game, so it is surprising when they do something later than what the game did. Again, not a bad change, just a change. I like the directing in the episode a lot, which feels very obvious. Obviously, Neil Druckmann is going to direct similarly to how the game feels, but it leaves this episode feeling more like the game did. There were shots that felt very much like in the game, like the way that Neil Druckmann does like establishing shots or opening shots for some of the scenes felt very reminiscent for how he would do that in the game. Like when we see Ellie's bedroom in the show, we get a couple establishing shots of like her posters and then her knife on the dresser, which feels very similar to how they would do opening establishing shots in the game. Like we kind of get a feel for the room, and then the knife on the dresser, which is something that Ellie did in the game. Um, so I don't know. It was just little moments like that when I saw the establishing shots and the way that they did that in the show. I was like, "Ah, Neil, you're back." Like it felt similar. You know, directors have their styles, and sometimes they're easier to pick up on than others, but that still just felt like a little something that was similar to the game. Okay, the museum scene is cute. The flashback with the museum, but I do like how it was done better in the game. I don't dislike the way it was done in the show, but I just think it was done better in the game for two reasons. One, simply by virtue of it being a video game, it feels more personal and you connect with it more, which is obviously criticism that I have about like everything that happens in the season. And it's something that I talked about in my last video is that it is really crucial that The Last of Us 2 is a video game. But and I think that The Last of Us 2 being a video game is really important in its violent moments, but also in its least violent scene that ever happens. So I feel the need to point that out here because I talked about it so much in my last one. Or sorry, my last video. It is basically this museum scene is basically a cutscene in the game, but you get that sense of discovery. You get to be with Joel again. You get to walk around and look at the dinosaur skeletons. You get to put the hat on the dinosaur. You get to find the capsule and get to find the helmet. The scene in the show isn't bad. It's just not as impactful as you discovering everything yourself. Reason two is that Ellie and Joel don't find the dead Firefly. You have been having so much fun with Joel, and now it all comes crashing back down to reality. But this is a minor moment of doubt. There's a dead Firefly who is in the museum who spray painted messages on the walls about how the Fireflies manipulated him, and in the end, he calls them liars, which is this image here. Ellie is questioning if the Fireflies were liars too, or maybe if Joel was a liar, but it's a bucket of cold water on a very fun day. The show does this too by having Ellie look at the fireflies, bugs, which is far more subtle than anything else that the season has done, which I like too. But it isn't quite as uncomfortable for both Ellie and Joel as finding the dead firefly, because in the show, only Ellie has that moment of like reflection where she looks at the fireflies and Joel is ignorant to it, which is something that they continue throughout this episode. But in the game, it's both of them. Both of them are aware of kind of the dead firefly, where Ellie's head's at. It's both of them in it together. I do think that Ellie looking at the fireflies works too. And I do feel like the overall scene works better in the video game, though. Ellie looking at the fireflies is the first time the show doesn't completely spell something out. So I gotta tip my hat to it and say that it works. Another thing that I missed from the museum is the moose that's being killed by all the wolves. It's like a statue because it's a natural history museum, so you have a bunch of taxidermy animals, you know. And there's one scene that's in the museum that's a moose being taken down by a bunch of wolves, which is a bit of foreshadowing to what happens with Joel. You know, Joel is this big, strong moose, and then he gets taken down by a bunch of wolves. I liked that moment. I thought it was cool. They don't have it in the show. That's fine. You have the scene of Joel walking in on Ellie and Kat making out and him getting mad at her. They have a bit of a conversation about her sexuality here while Joel dismisses it as experimentation. That doesn't happen in the game. The only time that they talk about Ellie's sexuality is when Joel asks if Dina is her girlfriend at the end. It is a quiet, calm moment of confrontation and acceptance where Joel is trying to get Ellie over onto his side more. That is part of the reason why Ellie calls him an asshole in this scene here, because he was being so nice about Dina and that he should have let her die in the hospital. Again, a minor gripe, but one that I feel demonstrated a lot of their unsaid understanding in the game and gives more depth to their relationship. Okay, the Eugene stuff in this episode isn't bad. When Gail talks about it in the first episode, I was like, oh, that sucks. That's stupid. But then when I actually saw the scene, I was like, okay, this isn't terrible. I like that Eugene in the game dies of a stroke and gives something for Ellie and Dina to strive to achieve. I also like that Jackson in the game allows people the opportunity to die of old age, that Ellie, by leaving Dina, she leaves behind the chance to grow old as well. I think Joel and Ellie here act very in character for them, which is certainly a lot different than than I can say about the rest of the season. So I'll take it. Thank you, Neil and Hallie. Eugene is infected and Joel wants to kill him, and Ellie wants to give him time to say goodbye to his wife. Joel takes the decision away from Ellie and kills him anyway because he deems it right. And then Ellie watches him lie to Gale. I like all that. That is definitely something that they would do. What I don't love is that Ellie confronts Joel about it in front of Gale. On one hand, I understand that she doesn't want Joel to be able to get away with lying to someone else, but on the other hand, I do not think that Ellie would let anyone else into the inner depths of her relationship with Joel. I think that she would confront Joel about it, but later. If she wanted to use this moment to have Ellie confront Joel about the fireflies, I would be okay with that. But I don't like that Ellie does this in front of Gale. I just think that it's a little weird, but again, that's minor. Ellie should have confronted Joel about lying about Eugene and the fireflies in Salt Lake. I think that would have been a really nice argument scene. So they have this defined point of separation, which I feel is important. The thing I hate about this episode is that we get the porch scene now. In the game, we do not get Ellie and Joel's final conversation again until the very end. It is the last full scene that we see in the game, and its placement at the end is very important. That is something that is supposed to explain why Ellie forgives Abby, because her final moment with Joel was a good one, because she talked to him about trying to forgive, because she has lost absolutely everything, and all she has is this moment of Joel and the possibility of forgiveness, and she leaves it all in that empty house. She is putting to bed everything about the revenge mission in that moment. Everything. Joel's death, his guitar, his love, her trying to forgive him. And now it seems like the scene has a different connotation. In the game, it's about us understanding the forgiveness. Because of its placement here, it feels like it's adding fuel to the fire of revenge. And if Ellie goes to the theater next week and wants to stop the revenge quest, then I will be very mad, which she kind of does. She kind of does. She shows regret, which I hate. I'll get into that. Anyway, Ellie should not be having those doubts at that point. And I don't even think she really ever has those doubts. It's different. She only wants to stop when it's long over. Okay. I also hate that we are combining the conversation that Ellie has of Ellie confronting Joel about lying about the fireflies and also her forgiving him. It is important that they have this fight 2 years before his death, where she says that they are done and that's it. He tells her what happened very explicitly, and she has to sit with it. Then 2 years later, after 2 years of thought and sitting with it, she's ready to try to forgive him. In the show, she wants to forgive him during the exact same conversation. Sure, she knew before that, but it is different when they explicitly spell it out and then they part ways. Ellie gets less time with Joel as a result of that. It leads to her feeling even more guilty about how she handled things at the end. That she was only going to try to work on their relationship when it was too late. His past had already caught up to him. The show is taking away the trauma and guilt that Ellie feels about spending her last years with him being upset over something that neither of them could change. Here, Ellie realizes Joel is lying 9 months before his death and doesn't confront him about it until the very end. Her moving out to the garage almost feels more chalked up to teen angst rather than any true fight. Everything about this scene has less of an impact than its game version. It is incredibly disappointing that they are changing the end of the game, which I absolutely love, to be a version with less impact and emotion. That sucks. And it makes me mad. What are they even going to do at the end of the game? Ellie will probably explain everything that she's feeling in great detail. And I also hate that Joel says, I love you to Ellie. That is, again, more spoon feeding of information. In the game, him saying, I would do it when he says, if the Lord somehow gave me a second chance at that moment, I would do it all over again. That is him saying, I love you. You don't need to have it spelled out. That is not the way that Joel and Ellie's relationship dynamic works, because they are not father and daughter. Because it's different than that. Because it's more complicated than that. Because it's got different layers to it. That is the most direct Joel is about. That is the only time that Joel is directly upfront with Ellie about how he feels about her, and it's still subtle. It's still not directly spelled out because that's just not the way that they work. And that is a complex and, interesting relationship. So the show just kind of dumbing it down a little bit so that Joel says, I love you, is just the dumber version of the story. It's the weaker version of the story. It's lame. And I know that's a nitpick, and I know that's something that maybe you can say I'm reading too much into, but it's still, it's something. It's something that I took issue with. Okay, we're back to a really bad episode with the season finale, episode 7. I know most of this review is me saying that this isn't like the game, but the game does everything better, I promise. The same issues that have plagued the rest of the season are here now. Scenes that go on for way too long, dialogue that has characters explaining literally everything, bizarre character changes that don't make sense, Ellie is stupid, the lighting is worse than it is in the game, which is not an issue I've brought up until this point, but it is an issue. And if you look at the pictures I included, you can kind of see it. What I am realizing is that it's kind of a strange situation that we find ourselves in, is that scenes go on for far too long, but the story itself still feels incredibly rushed. You do not feel like you have enough time to feel or care about anyone. Nothing is given the proper weight it deserves. And it feels like it's because they are fucking around in these too long scenes and adding things that just do not matter at all, leading to a feeling of a lot of dead weight everywhere throughout this season, which is a real shame. When Ellie comes in after just killing Nora in this episode, she looks pretty unaffected. She then goes and checks up on Dina, who was shot in the leg by Scars 2 episodes ago. Ellie is now confronting Dina in this moment, which is a strange flip of their dynamic of the scene in the game. Because in the scene in the game, it's Dina taking care of Ellie, and then it kind of starts with Ellie taking care of Dina. Strange flip. Anyway. In the game, all that Ellie says is that she made her talk. That's it. The only 2 sentences that she says in the scene are, I made her talk, and I don't want to lose you. That is all we got, and that is all we needed. She is clearly horrified by her actions and what she is capable of. Though, through those 2 sentences, we know exactly what Ellie is thinking about. She is horrified that she did that to Nora, and she realizes how much she loves and values Dina. That after doing something like that, she has someone to come back to. Ellie sees how important this is to her in that moment. There's also so much more intimacy in this moment between Ellie and Dina. Their body language is so much more connected. They really love each other. Also, look at how dirty Ellie is, and look at how clean they are here. I know this is different moments, but Ellie is like this dirty for most of the game. Look at how dirty she is. Anyway. Oh, sorry. And then this is the scene in the show. Look at how clean she is. Covered in grime and blood and dirt. Just stepped out of the shower. Are we serious here? Anyway, you don't really get into much of the, like, I don't know, that intimacy that Ellie and Dina have in the game. You really just don't see that in the show. And honestly, I don't see what Dina likes about Ellie in the show. She isn't charming or smart or capable. Dina is doing everything, so why does she want Ellie around? I don't understand it. But anyway, the scene in the show, as is per tradition, is 10 times longer than it is in the game, with way more dialogue. Ellie keeps talking about Nora and everything and asks about the baby, and then she tells Dina about Joel and the Fireflies. Dina in the game never finds out this information. We see like journal entries where Ellie talks about like maybe telling Dina, but that she'd be scared about how she would react. But in the show, they do away with that, and Ellie just tells Dina about Joel and the Fireflies. As much as Ellie loves Dina, she cannot put her into this most painful moment in her life. Everything about her and Joel, the intricacies of the relationship, their fight, if they made up or not, Ellie keeps that all to herself. It seems like Ellie is acting just like Joel in that moment. She doesn't want to talk about it, she just wants to act. Which is why she goes to Seattle and she doesn't tell Dina everything. Also, Ellie is the one with the arrow injury in the game, so it's even more about Dina taking care of her, despite how sick Dina is. Ellie finds out the next morning when when Ellie has been asleep in this dressing room, and she finds Dina in the hallway with a puke bucket and Jesse looking after her. Dina's asleep too. Dina is always willing to take care of Ellie, even at the detriment of her own health. She leaves Ellie to sleep in this dressing room when she goes and pukes up while she's really sick all night. And Jesse is the one who takes care of her, which you can tell that Ellie is both grateful for, but also a little jealous of. The dynamic is just not here in the show. Ellie and Dina's relationship is stripped of all of its complexity, nuance, and subtlety. It is all right in your face, spelled out for you, without much of the hardship or trauma. And then there is Ellie and Jesse's relationship, which is so bizarre. In the game, Elliot and Jesse are good friends. They are able to help each other, and Jesse tells Ellie that he would have come with her if she asked. He looked up to Joel because his friends' problems are his problems, and his friends can't get out of their own damn way. In the show, Jesse says he voted no on going to Jackson, which is the complete opposite of the game story. They keep doing this. Jesse is a voice of reason for Ellie. He tells her when it's time to go, and she believes him, as much as it pains her, because she respects him. And because they both love Dina, they have a quiet but trusting relationship. In the show, Jesse is a complete dick to Ellie, and it seems like he hates her. Every single thing he says to her is combative and argumentative. He is also constantly saying that he can't die, which, like, you guys don't really have to go that hard on the foreshadowing. We get it. Jesse and Ellie are arguing, and he says that he voted no on going to Jackson, and he says that everything Ellie does, she does for herself. Jesse in this episode also talks about how he found the theater because he followed Ellie's logical footsteps. Did they forget that Seattle is a huge city? It would be impossible to do that. Then Abby just finds the theater too? Ellie had a map in the game that she dropped that led Abby to the theater. Ellie in the show doesn't have that. So what are they gonna do? Jesse's whole logic of finding Shimmer and then going to the theater is literally insane. From the general geography that the game is using, I say that Shimmer is probably in a bookstore in Capitol Hill, which is this train station here. I have this lovely Apple Maps screenshot that I took to try to demonstrate this. I'm guessing that Shimmer is somewhere in the Capitol Hill neighborhood. This is the Capitol Hill station, subway station. And I say that the theater is probably near the Westlake train station based on the mural that Ellie and Dina see in that train station and also just kind of general geography. That is an entire train stop away. 10-minute train ride. Sorry, I say 10-minute walk, I mean 10-minute train ride and probably a 20-30-minute walk. There is no way to just casually guess their direction and stumble upon the theater. The Westlake station itself is a big station. There are multiple exit points that leave you blocks apart. And this version of Seattle doesn't appear to be all that dangerous, so it's not like the theater is the only possible safe direction. The logical hoops that you have to jump through to justify this move is literally insane. So, like, I include this because, the Capitol Hill, assuming that Shimmer is in Capitol Hill, which we don't know if he is or not, assuming he's in Capitol Hill, the 10-minute train station. Okay, so Jesse assumes that they take the subway. That's not a guarantee, by the way. That's an assumption he's making. Look at how big all of this is. All of this other area. All of this other area. You see how many blocks this is? Ellie and Dina could have gone in any direction. In any direction. In the game, Hillcrest is a fake neighborhood that they put in, and that's the whole Ellie and Jesse scene. But they put it kind of around this area here. But look at, never mind that they could have gone up to UW. They could have gone, to Fremont, to Queen Anne, down. They could have gone down. Seattle is a big place. And it is not just logical that, of course, Shimmer is in Capitol Hill. Therefore, of course, Ellie and Dina are going to Westlake. That's not obvious. See how big this is? This is really big. I needed to point that out. Okay. And also, how the fuck did Ellie miss the aquarium and go to Bainbridge Island? That is incredibly hard to miss. The aquarium is right there. Okay, so we have 2 more maps. This one is courtesy of my dear friend Remy. Thank you, Remy, for providing this. So, if Ellie finds the boat, and let's just say, for argument's sake, that, because if you want to go to Bainbridge Island in real life, you would go to the ferry station here and take the ferry to Bainbridge Island, which is the Seraphied Island in real life. So it's like a 30-minute ferry ride to get to Bainbridge Island. Ellie on that little boat is probably taking her a little bit longer. But So if Ellie, let's say Ellie found a boat at the ferry dock, which would make sense, or even at any of the piers. Like, let's say she's at the pier here. It is so close to the aquarium. It is so close to the aquarium. It is really hard to miss. And yes, it's a storm. Yes, it's dark out. But the aquarium has lights on. We see that. We know that Elwyn has access to electricity, and we know that he has lights on. So it's like, it really doesn't make any sense that Ellie would just completely miss the aquarium. I have this also image here because the theater that Ellie and Dina stay at isn't a real theater, but because it's near Westlake Station, the Westlake Station, I'm gonna say, for argument's sake, that it's just the Regal that's right there. There's other theaters around there, but I went to the Regal a lot when I lived there, so for argument's sake, it's the Regal. So this is on top of a hill. This is the aquarium. This is a couple blocks away, but also this is at the top of the hill. So it's like you can see the aquarium and especially the Ferris wheel from like 4th Avenue. Like once you get there to that point, like you can very obviously see the Ferris wheel. So like if it, in the show, Ellie's like, "Oh, wheel, oh," and then she doesn't see it until like, they're in the Nordstrom, I think, which is right here, right next to the Regal. So, I'm just saying the Nordstrom because that's where Ellie and Jesse were in the game. I don't know if that's where they are in the show. But the Nordstrom is right there. So if you can see, it's just so you can see the Ferris wheel. And again, see how close the ferry booth is? You can see it. Like you can see it. The Ferris wheel is also very big. You can see it from many points in the city. So this is just all very, it's like, I know we're taking some fictional liberties here with the location of things, and that's fine. But it's like, come on. Come on, guys. Come on. Come on. Okay. So outside of geography, there are a lot of other things that are coincidental that happen in this episode. Jesse happens to find Jesse happens to find Ellie and Dina. Owen and Mel happen to have a map so that Ellie can have the scene play out the same way that it does in the game, as opposed to Ellie just having her own map the whole time. Ellie just happens to find a boat that is right there and easy for her to use. Nothing happens as organically as it does in the game. The show is still doing the whole tell don't show thing. We keep hearing that Ellie has a violent heart and that she's really selfish, while also at the same time she's acting way less violently and selfishly than she does in the game. I find it hard to be convinced that Ellie is so selfish, which is what Jesse calls her when they're having that argument in the Nordstrom, I think, where she sees the Ferris wheel. Jesse's like, "You do everything for you," which is like, seriously? Because like the scene before, she wanted to save a Scar from being killed by wolves, and Jesse said no. Ellie in the game would never have wanted to save the Scar. She would have killed both the wolves and the Scar if they were in her way. In fact, she does that several times. She has no sympathy for anyone outside of her circle, and she does not hesitate to kill people. This is a world with a lot of murder. We saw that in the first show, or the first season, and the first game. So the fact that for some reason Ellie wants to be a hero and save a Scar makes literally no sense. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. You can't have Ellie be this violent person who's incredibly selfish, but also you want Ellie to be a hero and she saves people from being victims. And especially when you have Jesse call her out the scene later for being selfish, and when Ellie in the game would have never even thought about saving a Scar. Sorry, I'm jumping all over the place. But, okay, back to the scene with Ellie and Dina in the dressing room. Ellie, where Dina is they're taking care of each other or whatever. Ellie is talking to Dina about Nora and says that maybe she didn't deserve what she got. That is actually not what Ellie would say or feel in the game at all. She is horrified by what she is capable of. It's not that she doesn't think Nora didn't deserve it. That is, again, the show sanitizing the ideas and themes of the game, or maybe just straight up misinterpreting them. Then Dina says that maybe Nora did deserve it. And then Ellie tells Dina about Joel and the Fireflies, and Dina's like, maybe we should go. Like, what? She just gave Ellie this whole speech about hunting down her mother and sister's killer to the ends of the earth, and then she says Nora did deserve what she got, and then she says, maybe we should leave. That doesn't make any sense. If you try to argue that Dina was horrified by what Joel did and changed her mind, that would be a crazy, immediate switch flipping decision, especially given how close that Dina was to Joel and how bent on revenge she was. But also, there is nowhere near the same level of urgency that there is in the game. They have not encountered very many issues. Ellie and Dina have been pretty happy. Dina has been shot in the leg. The best idea would be to camp out for a few months and let Dina's leg heal so that she can travel. In the game, the urgency was there because Dina was so sick. That's why they had to leave right now. So when Dina says we should leave while she's like limping away, it's like, come on, be serious. In the game, Dina is very sick. She needed proper medical care because she couldn't function. She needed a doctor, and that is why they had to leave. I'd also like to note how crazy it is that it is so easy for them to move around Seattle. In the game, it is a pain in the ass to get anywhere. Streets are more often flooded or collapsed than not. There are clickers or wolves or scars everywhere. Getting to the hospital is a gigantic undertaking. Getting to the aquarium is an undertaking. It is difficult. There is none of this here. See, look at the screenshot from the game. Like, this is Ellie looking out and there's the Ferris wheel. Like, look at how difficult this is all just to get through. Seattle seems pretty fine in the show, honestly. If they stayed holed up in the theater, they would be absolutely fine. They might run out of food, but I'm sure they can like scavenge some. Like, I really don't understand. Like, why do they have to leave immediately? They really don't. They really don't. Okay. We also get a scene in the middle here where Isaac is told that Abby, Owen, and Mel are gone. Isaac is upset and says that he wants Abby because she is a special soldier. He wants her to take over for him when he eventually dies, which is insane to me. Why would you want this version of Abby to lead the wolves? She is not intimidating and she does not appear to be very capable. Killing one unarmed old man does not make you a competent or strong soldier. She is also very physically weak. But I know I'm saying that because of her game counterpart, but still, very strange. Another side note is that the lighting in the show has been very flat and boring, and especially in this episode. The lighting in the game is far more interesting and bright. In the show, Ellie is on the boat to the aquarium, and you cannot fucking see anything. Or even the dressing room scene with Ellie and Dina is lit and shot far better in the game. You have more interesting shot compositions in the game. The show keeps doing these weird, shallow, flat shots, or the lighting is really boring, and you have far more interesting and dynamic lighting in the game. Also, in the dressing room scene, Ellie, like, the acting is way better than it is in the show. And I really don't think it's Bella Ramsey's fault because they do a good job with the information, like the lines that they are given and the direction that they are given. But Ellie in the game just has a better reaction to that. And again, I really do think it's the directing and the writing. I really don't think it's Bella Ramsey's fault. But it's like, I don't know. It's just, it's it's another thing. But it's like, this is Ellie like riding the boat, and this is not Ellie in the show driving the boat because I could not find a screenshot of it, and it was lit and really fucking dark, so you really couldn't see anything in the show. Okay, also, as Ellie is going to the aquarium, she washes up on the Seraphite Island, which I talked about before. But I talked about more like the geography of it. Now I'm going to talk about the actual story of it. What the fuck was that about? We absolutely 1000% did not have time for this bizarrely added scene where Ellie gets dragged by the scars and hung for a second. That is very weird. It adds nothing. It changes nothing. We learn nothing, and the scene is like 3 minutes long. How did this get past the editing stage? How is this beneficial for the pacing? They are trying to draw another parallel between Ellie and Abby, since this is what's going to happen to Ellie or to Abby next season. But that is really stupid. We don't need this scene. The scene was just there to waste time, which I hate. I'd also like to complain about the aquarium scene. Number one, the lighting sucks. Why does it feel so much more cramped and claustrophobic? If we want to do a lighting comparison between the show and the game, They look pretty different, lighting wise. Everyone, I think, in film should follow the advice of the guy who lit the Helm's Deep battle in The Two Towers. The lighting comes from the same place the music does. I do not desperately need realistic lighting. I need something that looks cool. The lighting in the game is much cooler toned. Uh, I don't know why the show really loves warm lighting. It's like a lot of the moments in the game will be lit similarly, but it just like cooler tone. And then the show's warm, which I don't really know why they're doing that. It's supposed to be like cold and like miserable. Like a cool tone can kind of convey that a little bit. Not in this scene directly, but anyway. Um, so you have it's like you still have the spotlight that's like the main lighting in the scene in the game, but you have the blues of the aquarium and it feels much more open, much wider. And the blues also add to the mood of everything. They do have the spotlight here, clearly, but the blue ambient light from the aquarium is missing. Ellie also doesn't kill the dog in the show, which fine. I guess it might be harder to adapt, and also it would be an incredibly far stretch for this Ellie to do anything that violent. But then she shoots Owen, and the bullet goes through his neck and hits Mel. Oh, we're going for realism here, and we got fucking magic bullet number two. Did Ellie like load the gun with the same bullet that killed JFK? Like, how the fuck is it just like magically going through Owen's neck and then barely grazing Mel so that it's like, oh, she's bleeding out? What? That's really stupid. I also hate that Ellie accidentally kills Mel. And then she's crying and upset about it, and Mel asks her to cut out her baby. Like, Ellie makes the very conscious decision to kill Mel in the game. Yes, she doesn't know that she's pregnant when she kills her, but she still kills her nonetheless. And again, the horror she feels is at her own actions, not that Mel might not have deserved it. These are different things. They keep trying to say that Ellie is violent and selfish, but then she is much less violent and selfish. Ellie is like crying her eyes out. Ellie in the game doesn't do that. Taking away Ellie's decision to kill Mel is yet another instance in a long laundry list of the show making the safer choice in the game. They are trying to make the characters more likable, but by doing so, they make them more stereotypical and boring. I do not like this Ellie. She is weak and boring. She is not making the same kind of interesting choices that she did in the game, and that goes for all characters. Looks like all that Tommy did here was probably go to the marina, and that's it. And then when he and Ellie have the same conversation that Ellie and Tommy do here, when Tommy asks or says says to Ellie that Abby gets to live, can you make peace with that? It does not hit anywhere near the same because in the game, Ellie and Tommy are equals. They were both extremely hurt badly by this. They both went on their own revenge missions. So when they both have to leave, they know that it hurts even worse for both of them. Tommy asks if it's okay that Abby gets to live in the game, which is very genuine. He's genuinely asking her. I think if Ellie said no, then he would have sent Jesse and Dina on their way and he would have stayed with Ellie. Or he would have sent Jesse, Dina, and Ellie on their way and he would have stayed and killed Abby. But Ellie knew that it was the right decision for Dina, and I think that if Abby hadn't shown up, then Ellie would have ditched them anyway. And maybe her and Tommy would have ended up going at it together. I don't know. But that is more of my own interpretation. It is important that Ellie and Tommy are equals in their hurt and revenge, because then that allows the scene at the farmhouse to actually have any impact. I do not think it will, and I do not think that Ellie is going to be able to leave. You do not get the feeling that she is on a mission here, that she is obsessed, that this is all that matters to her. It only matters in select moments, not the whole time. Then the end of the episode is mostly like the game, except Ellie is crying and then says, like, no, no, no at the end, which everyone has been joking about. Game Ellie would not do that. She does not cry. She does not apologize. She came there to kill Abby and her friends. There is no regret. Ellie is like, I didn't mean to kill your friends. Girl, yes, you did. What the fuck? Ellie would have never begged for her life or show remorse to Abby in the game. Never. I just really do not like this version of Ellie. I know I'm a broken record. I know that I keep complaining about the same things. There really is no comparison between the source material and the adaptation. Also, Ellie was literally told why Abby killed Joel, but then she still tells Abby he did what he did to save me. I am the one that you want. when she knows that Abby is here because Joel killed her dad. She knows that Abby doesn't want her beef with Joel. Craig, did you forget that you changed that? At every turn, the show makes bafflingly terrible decisions. They do not understand the story that they are adapting. In the podcast, they talk about how Ellie gets a thrill out of violence, which I find to be very different from her game character. I do not think that Ellie in the game enjoys violence at any point, not even when she's young. She has more of a fuck you attitude when she's young and believes herself to be invincible, not that she enjoys violence. We see her really coming into the role of seeing violence as necessary, but Ellie isn't built for this. We see that when she kills Nora. She's killing like Joel, and in that moment, her body and psyche reject it. She's shaking, she can't breathe, she can't focus. She's rejecting what she did. Violence is a necessity in this world. You do not get that feeling in the show at all. Throughout the season, Ellie only kills 4 people. And even then, not really. She leaves Nora to die of infection, and she accidentally kills Mel. So, 2.5. In the game, the joke is that she kills half of the population of Seattle. These are 2 different properties that treat violence very differently, but the show keeps emphasizing that Ellie has a violent heart, which the game does not do. They are telling me that Ellie is violent while making her much less violent than she is in the game, which I know I've said before. The show is telling me that Ellie is a violent person, but makes her have a lot of regret while only killing 2.5 people. Game Ellie sees violence as a necessity and is shocked by the act, but not the result. And she kills an unknown amount of people in the game. It's really got to be the hundreds. Yet the game never tries to sell the narrative that Ellie is more violent than anyone else in this world or that she is an exception in any way. I have a hard time buying that Ellie in the show is any different or should be seen as having gone too far, but she goes considerably less far than Ellie does in the game. We see the level of violence that Ellie exhibits in Joel, Tommy, and Abby in the game. No character is spared. The game doesn't want us to play the game and take away the message that Ellie was too violent. I want you to take away that Ellie was too obsessed. Intent, that is the difference. You do not get the feeling that Ellie in the show is obsessed, and it doesn't seem like that is an aspect of her character that the show wants to criticize. They want to criticize the violence, because the world does not operate on the same moral standards that it did before the outbreak. So to hold the characters to an outdated moral code that no character in the game upholds is a bizarre change. Criticizing the violence over the obsession is an avenue that I feel to be disingenuous to the core themes of the game and Ellie as a character. So when I say that I believe that Craig Mazin fundamentally doesn't understand the themes of the game, that is certainly one of the bigger examples. I was talking to one of my coworkers who only watches the show and hasn't played the game, and she had an interesting perspective. She was not on board with Ellie's revenge mission at all. The moments of violence Ellie showed were unbelievable, and she was frustrated with Ellie's stupidity for getting into those situations. That demonstrates the show's failure to getting people on board with Ellie's perspective. In the game, the hard thing they had to accomplish was to get you to not agree with the revenge mission over time. The show failed to even get viewers on board with the revenge mission at all. The season was horrible. If this season wins a single Emmy while Andor doesn't, you will see me on the news. This show should not be nominated for anything. It should not be in the awards conversation. It was incredibly disappointing. I did not get any joy from this. I don't understand how they got season 1 right, but then they just don't get it right at all here. And I could sense the sanitizing in the first season, and I was worried that it would get worse, but I didn't think it was going to get this bad. I clearly have too much to say about this, and I am upset. At least it's over. This is a story about revenge. It doesn't seem like Ellie even regrets this, even at the end when she finishes it in the game. This season is not about revenge. Ellie having regrets here is really stupid. Also, the game works because you have been building to this moment with Abby and then you immediately start over playing as her. We're going to have to wait 2 years when that should be experienced immediately. It should have just been 1 season that's longer. Seriously. Oh well. I guess the only thing that came from the show is people really appreciating the game more and playing the game. Appreciating the game more and also people playing the game more. Last of Us 2 Supremacy Gang Rise. Also, this is me coping with the idea of having to watch more of the show. No one is making me do this but myself, but still. Okay, that is all that I have for today. Thank you for listening.